Chapter 551. Under the effect of the talisman array, the black horse carriage moved silently on the mountain road as if it was riding the wind. Many horses were grazing on the grassy slope beside the mountain stream, covering the sound of the big black horse's hooves. Dozens of cultivators under the big tree did not notice the arrival of Ning, Kay, and Sang Sang. But the girl under the bamboo wall noticed it. Having entered the knowing destiny state, she could clearly perceive the slightest change of the chi of heaven and earth around her. She was originally the most talented talisman master in the world. Now that she had entered the state of divine talisman master, how could she not notice the aura of talisman Taoism from the black horse carriage? Or was it because she had been silently looking at the direction of the mountain road? Wanting to see someone? Looking at the black horse carriage that gradually stopped in the distance. The girl's eyes were filled with joy and slight confusion. Then she calmed down and slowly walked over there. Many cultivators on the plain by the stream had been silently paying attention to the girl this entire time, including that noble young master who was surrounded by many cultivators to curry favor. As the girl left the bamboo and walked towards the black carriage in the distance, their gazes subconsciously followed her, appearing rather perplexed. Some people were guessing who was in the black horse carriage that could make the world-famous calligraphy addict move to greet him. Some smart people, or people who were more familiar with the Tang Empire, had already guessed the truth and could not help but show a shocked expression. Ninkei did not pay attention to the expressions and reactions of the cultivators under the big tree. He just silently watched the girl walking toward him. As she came closer and closer, he watched the face that he had not seen for a long time and rarely thought of but had not forgotten become clearer and clearer in his sight. He became more and more nervous. The girl had indeed lost a lot of weight, but she was still beautiful. Her eyes were as clear as an autumn lake, and her eyelashes were thin and sparse. Her lips were thin and bright, and her black hair cascaded over her shoulders like a waterfall. Her white dress was like a white dandelion. As she moved, her simple and clean cloth shoes moved out of her dress from time to time, and then floated back in her dress like leaves in the wind. It seemed as if nothing had changed from before. In the past year and a half, Ninkei often received letters from the Great River Kingdom. The letters seemed to have the smell of ink and were written in a graceful handwriting about daily affairs, never about love. After reading these letters, he would either give them to Sang Sang or throw them away. He would also write back, but he rarely wrote anything in the letters. Most of the time, he would just send some sections that he was satisfied with. Last year, when he decided to attend the Yulan Hungry Ghost Festival at the Lank Temple, Ninkei had thought that the calligraphy addict would definitely be invited, and she might really come. He had thought many times about what it would be like when they met again, what she would say, and what he should say. However, the more he thought about it, the more confused he became. The more he thought about it, the more nervous and helpless he became. So he stopped thinking about it and forgot about it until he saw her reappear in front of him by the mountain stream. Ninkei didn't know what to do as he looked at the girl who was slowly approaching him. He hoped that he could hear some sounds coming from the carriage behind him. He hoped that he could hear Song Song's fake coughs. Even if it was just the sound of her clothes moving, it would calm him down and make him look more indifferent. Mo Shan Shan walked to the front of the carriage. The big black horse found that it was the beautiful mistress that it first recognized and liked. It shook its head and neighed, looking very happy. Mo Shan Shan smiled and raised her hand to touch its head. The big black horse desperately tried to squeeze its huge head in her palm and rubbed it affectionately. It looked very funny. Ninkei patted its back, silently warning it not to be too excited and nervous and lose its composure. At the same time, he also told himself not to be too excited and nervous and lose his composure. In the carriage, Sang Sang still did not make any sound. But at this time, he was much calmer. He looked at Mo Shan Shan and bowed with hands folded in front. Mo Shan Shan returned the bow and bowed to the black carriage. She said calmly, "Greetings, Lady of Light." Song Song's voice finally came from the carriage. "Greetings, Hill Master." The first words of the two girls were very calm and polite. Ninkei could not help but be speechless when he heard Song Song's calm and gentle voice, which actually sounded like a bigwig from the West Hill Divine Palace. Just when he was at a loss of what to do, Song Song's voice came from the carriage again. "Young master, I'm a little tired. I want to rest in the carriage." Ning Ke understood that she was giving him a chance to talk to Mo Shan Shan alone. After a moment of silence, he grunted and walked in front of Mo Shan Shan. He said, "Let's take a walk by the stream." Looking at the back of the young man and woman walking to the mountain stream, the big black horse lightly kicked its hind hooves and snorted. It praised in its heart that they were really a beautiful couple. Of course, Sang Sang was also very good. But why did Ning Ke want both of them? If humans wanted women and needed to marry, then he should just marry both. Looking at this guy's current glory, who would dare to stop him? Back then, I already had a lover in the Southern military camp. But when I saw that snow-white mare in the wilderness, I still did not flinch and wanted to have a go with her. Love really needs courage. Just when the big black horse kept mocking Ning Ke and felt pity for him and wanted to encourage him to have more courage, Song Song's question suddenly came from the carriage behind him. Sang Sang asked, "Are you familiar with Miss Shan Shan?" The big black horse's body suddenly stiffened. He knew that Sang Sang had seen all the intimate scenes between him and Mo Shan Shan. He could not help but feel terrified. As a big animal and pet of the Ning family from the old brush pen shop to the Yanming Lake, he knew better than anyone else in the world that in this family, the mistress would always be the most powerful. This had nothing to do with Sang Sang becoming the Lady of Light of the West Hill Divine Palace. After all, the world had already been operating like this when she was still a little handmaiden. Under such circumstances, the big black horse knew that any explanation he gave would be a cover-up, and he would most likely die an ugly death. So he bared his teeth and looked at the horse carriage. He kept wagging his tail and tried his best to play dumb to please Sang Sang. On the grassy slope beside the mountain stream, there were many horses eating grass with their heads lowered. They should be the mounts of the cultivators who came to visit the mountain. Not far away, there were some wild goats playing. Both parties were silent and peaceful. Ning Ke and Mo Shan Shan walked to the side of the stream and were also silent. However, the atmosphere was not as peaceful as on the grassy slope. Although nothing happened, it was really difficult for them to live in peace. There was an awkward and uneasy atmosphere. The silence had to be broken. If Mo Shan Shan still needed to take the first step, eldest brother of the academy would probably mock him for many years if he knew about it, no matter how gentle he was. That was indeed not manly. So Ning Ke looked at her and asked, "How have you been the past year?" The two of them had been communicating through letters for the past year and a half. Even if they were talking about trivial matters, they would also talk about recent events. There was no need for him to ask specifically. After such a long silence and such a serious tone, he ended up asking such a question. This could only mean that his brain was still not working well at this time. "I broke through the realm in calligraphy cultivation." Mo Shan Shan did not laugh or feel annoyed. She answered calmly and seriously. As she spoke, the serious expression on her face and the focused gaze in her eyes gave this simple question and answer a sense of ritual. Then she smiled and asked, "What about you? You rarely mentioned it in your letters." "So did I. I broke through the realm in calligraphy cultivation." After a short pause, Ning Ke smiled bitterly and said, "I killed a few people along the way." Hearing this, Mo Shan Shan looked into his eyes seriously and confirmed that her previous perception was not wrong. She said joyfully, "When did you break through the realm? That's really worth congratulating." Ning Ke looked at her and said with a smile, "You became a divine talisman master in spring. I did it much later than you. What's there to be happy about? Now that I think about it, the letter you left when you left Chong and was really prophetic. When you saw the more magnificent rivers and mountains, I was still struggling to climb in the mountain stream." Mo Shan Shan smiled and said, "But now you have seen the scenery at the top of the mountain. Well, the scenery here is not bad." Ning Ke moved his gaze from the bottomless mountain stream by the cliff to the peaks of Wa Mountain. Mo Shan Shan suddenly thought of the thing that worried her the most after they parted. She asked, "I was really shocked to know that you were going to duel with Xiaoho. At that time, no one in the Great River Kingdom, including the headmaster, was optimistic about you. Ninkei looked into her beautiful eyes and asked, "What about you?" Emo Shanshan thought for a while and said, "Although there is really no reason to think that you will win, I don't know why I always feel that even if you lose, you will be fine. At least you will not die." Ninkei was slightly curious and asked, "You actually have so much confidence in me?" Emo Shanshan smiled and said, "That year when we left the front gate of the Devil's Doctrine, Yihong Yu once told me in a hanging basket that a shameless person like you usually has a long life. Was this the saying that a scourge could live for 1,000 years?" Ninkei was a little annoyed and said, "I don't like to hear such slander. Although she is now the great divine priest of judgment, if she really pushed me, I would dare to find trouble with her." Emo Shanshan did not mention this matter anymore and asked, "How does it feel to defeat Xiaohou?" "The feeling of defeating the enemy is not important. Even if I can't beat the enemy, it's fine as long as I can kill the enemy. So you should ask me, how does it feel to kill Xiaohou?" Just like on the journey in the wilderness, Ning Ke began to instill the cold-blooded and realistic fighting methods and ideas into her habitually. He said, "There was a moment of ecstasy, then exhaustion and confusion, and finally, it all returned to the peace after getting what I wanted." Emo Shanshan listened to him silently, looking at the extremely faint scar on his face and the extremely shallow dimple. She was a little absent-minded, thinking of the fierce battle on the winter lake in the rumors. She always felt that there were many things hidden under his calm expression that made her heart palpitate. She even felt that his dimple was filled with fresh blood, and she could not help but feel a little sad. "When this matter really spread to the Great River Kingdom, I didn't know that you had such a miserable childhood," she said with a slightly trembling voice, unable to hide her love for him. Ninkei did not want to talk about this topic. Looking at her cheeks that were slightly thinner than before, he joked, "The flesh on your face is all gone. It seems that you have had a hard time in the past 2 years." He had originally wanted to make a joke to dilute the previous depressed atmosphere, but as soon as he said it, he knew that it was wrong. As the world's calligraphy addict, she was loved by the master of calligrapher and respected by her peers. She broke through the knowing destiny state in spring and became an extremely rare young divine talisman master. Her life could be said to be extremely smooth and happy. What else could make her worry and become haggard other than love? If it was an ordinary woman, upon hearing these words, even if she didn't immediately burst into tears, she would at least reveal a sorrowful expression. At the very least, she would force a smile with a hint of reluctance, which would make the man feel guilty. Emo Shanshan was not an ordinary woman, so she just smiled and said nothing. Ninkei looked at her gratefully and said, "I thought that the Lang Temple would definitely invite you to the Yulan Hungry Ghost Festival, but the envoys of various countries are discussing the desolate man's southward journey. Other cultivators may be worried about the rumor of the underworld invasion. According to your temperament, you should not come. Do you want Elder Qishan to guide you? But you are now a divine talisman master who knows the knowing destiny state. You should know your own destiny. Why do you need someone to help you?" As soon as he said this, he immediately knew that he had made a big mistake. The calligraphy addict naturally did not need Elder Qishan to help her with questions about cultivation or talisman Taoism. She did not even need to ask about life. So naturally she asked. No matter how great Emo Shanshan was, she was still a girl. After hearing these 2 questions from Ning Ke, she could not help but feel a little embarrassed and annoyed. She looked at him and asked, "Then why are you here? Do you want to steal the Buddhist scriptures of the Lang Temple?" Ning Ke knew that he had made a mistake, so he did not dare to mock her back. He said honestly, "The Academy always needs people to show respect to the grand meeting of the cultivation world. I represent the Academy to enter the human realm, so I have to come." Then he looked a little sad and said, "More importantly, my Song-Song's illness has acted up again. This time, even the teacher can't do anything about it. But the teacher said that the Lang Temple can cure it, so I brought her here." During the journey in the wilderness, especially during the time when they continued to the north, Emo Shanshan and Ning Ke had been traveling together. Naturally, they talked about a lot of people and things around them. She talked about her fellow disciples in the Black Ink Garden, while Ning Ke talked about his fellow disciples in the academy and his comrades in the city of Wei. But most of the time, he talked about his little handmaiden at home. Naturally, he also talked about their childhood and the little handmaiden's old illness. Mo Shanshan had heard the words, "my sang-sang," countless times from Ning Quebec. She had also read the chicken soup calligraphy, so she knew how important sang-sang was to him even before Ning Ke himself. So even though she had only met sang-sang twice and had not spoken more than 10 sentences, she was actually very familiar with sang-sang. She even felt a sense of closeness to sang-sang, except for a certain person and some things. Hearing that sang-sang was seriously ill, she looked at the black horse carriage not far away and was very worried. But she did not say anything. Ning Ke could see that her worry was sincere. He felt a warmth in his heart and then a sense of guilt. He was capable but not virtuous, but he could be loved by such a beautiful and kind woman. What a ridiculous thing. What's going on over there? He looked at the crowd under the big tree and pointed at the stone chess and the yellow-robed old monk who was playing chess. Mo Shanshan did not expect that he would not know the rules of the cultivation world for many years, even though he had already entered the Tile Mountain. She explained, being able to get an answer from Master Qishan is something that cultivators look forward to the most. So every time the master comes out of the hut, many cultivators, especially those who are not from the wild, will come to the Tile Mountain. After all, this is a quiet place for Buddhism. It can't become as noisy as a market. Moreover, the master can't choose a fated person from thousands of people. So, since many years ago, the Lang Temple has set a rule that only cultivators who pass the 3 chess games will be qualified to be chosen by Master Qishan before they reach the cave. Ning Ke looked at the big tree and frowned. For example, we have to win against that old monk to cross the bridge? Mo Shanshan nodded and said, sitting and talking in the Tile Mountain is a very famous event in the cultivation world. It is said that one of the 3 chess games is an incomplete game, one is a real game, and the last is a temporary game. Ning Ke asked, do we have to win 3 games in a row to reach the hut? Mo Shanshan said, the last time Master Qishan opened the hut to choose a fated person was decades ago. I'm not very clear about the details, but the master is an eminent monk of the Buddhism sect. I think he will not just decide based on winning or losing. If the visitor can show his wisdom or other meaningful qualities during the game, he will be chosen by the master. But the 3 games must be played. Ning Ke asked why. Mo Shanshan did not explain. Because it is a rule. Ning Ke shook his head and said, rules are dead, but people are alive. He said it seriously, but Mo Shanshan laughed and said, you can't play chess? Ning Ke was a little embarrassed and said, I am willing to fight with swords. I don't like to waste my energy on chess. Mo Shanshan said with a little worry, then what will you do? Ning Ke said with a smile, what else can I do? No one will dare to stop me. But if these monks are really stupid enough to go against the academy, you have to help me. Mo Shanshan looked at his playful appearance. This time, she finally saw the hidden determination and ruthlessness in his eyes. She couldn't help but feel a little sour in her heart. Then it softened. She knew that since this matter was related to Song Song's life, no matter what difficulties and obstacles there were, even if it was Hao Ian in front of him, Ning Ke would cut through them. This really made her very jealous. She really liked this. It is a little late, but I wrote a lot more in this chapter. It is almost 5,000 words. Haha. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 552. The cultivators under the big tree had been paying attention to the young man and woman by the stream. They knew very well that although the calligraphy addict had a gentle temperament, she rarely paid any attention to men. At this time, seeing that she was talking happily with the young man, they could not help but whisper, guessing the identity and origin of the young man. Some of them had vaguely guessed Ning Ke's identity. The scene in front of them confirmed their guess. The shock in their hearts turned into respect and fear. They did not know if they should greet the legendary sublime being of the academy. Instead, they should remain silent to avoid upsetting him. The nobleman from the South Gene Kingdom sensed the change in the atmosphere. The rogue cultivators who surrounded him to please him were uneasy. He glanced at the two figures by the stream, and his face darkened. He was of noble status, but he had personally come to the Lang Temple to attend the Yulon Hungry Ghost Festival. Other than representing the royal family of the South Gene Kingdom to show respect to Master Chishan, the South Gene Kingdom's benefactor, the more important reason was that he knew the calligraphy addict would come. He wanted to show his sincerity through this. He even secretly hoped that if he could get Master Chishan's promise to solve his doubts, he might be able to have a happy ending with a woman in Wa Mountain. The royal family of the South Gene Kingdom had privately tested the calligraphy addict's feelings, but they were rejected. The nobleman's several letters had gone unanswered. Only then did he realize that Emo Shanshan was not an ordinary woman. After entering Wa Mountain today, he had suppressed his desire to be close to her in order not to make her feel unhappy that he was pestering her. He pretended to be calm and wanted to leave a good impression on her. As the nobleman shook his shoulders and chatted with the cultivators in a reserved and gentle manner, he nervously guessed that Emo Shanshan would be watching him quietly with admiration in her eyes. He thought that he had succeeded, but he suddenly realized that the woman he admired did not care about him at all. Instead, she went to the stream to whisper with a man who had appeared out of nowhere. She was laughing so happily. The surprised gazes and whispered guesses of the cultivators under the tree attracted Ning Kei's attention. It could not escape his keen senses, especially the gloomy face of the young master from the South Gene Kingdom, whom he had met in the Lang Temple yesterday morning. He could not help but frown slightly. Thinking of certain things, he had to admit that if he did not consider character and morality, and only based on his family background, the young master from the South Gene Kingdom was probably the most suitable partner for the calligraphy addict in the world. As for character and morality, he himself did not have those qualities. Thinking of this, he felt inexplicably unhappy. Ning Kei looked at the nobleman from the South Gene Kingdom and asked, "Did you come with that person?" Emo Shanshan shook her head. Somehow, after confirming that she did not come to the Lang Temple with the nobleman from the South Gene Kingdom, Ning Kei's displeasure disappeared. He smiled and said, "But he must have followed you here." Emo Shanshan did not know why he would say that. A chilly autumn wind rose from the bottom of the stream and blew along the stone platform. There was a rustling sound in the big green tree. However, the branches and leaves in the canopy were too thick and there were no gaps in the wind. The South Gene nobleman's robe was lifted by the wind and his bright yellow belt was suddenly hidden. "I know he is the crown prince of the South Gene Kingdom," Ning Kei said. Emo Shanshan was slightly surprised. Ning Kei smiled and said, "We met in the Lang Temple yesterday. We had a small argument, but you know that I am more gentle now. Even if he asked me what I am, I did not tell him. In my eyes, he is not even a thing, because I have dealt with him much earlier. He once wanted to buy my chicken soup calligraphy to please you. That time, I really slapped him until his face was red and swollen. Now, I have no interest in slapping him again." Emo Shanshan looked at the mountain stream under the cliff and lowered her head with a smile. Ning Kei thought that she did not know what happened at the auction where the old brush pen shop was stolen. So he told her about it and said happily, "Mr. 13 did not give face to the crown prince of the South Gene Kingdom. Instead, he gave him this loud slap." Emo Shanshan looked up and asked with a smile, "Are you very proud?" Ning Kei thought for a moment and said, "I did feel very proud at that time. Now that I think about it, I am still a little proud." "Then you are really proud." Emo Shanshan nodded and said, "Actually, I know about this." Ning Kei thought that since she knew about it, it was really awkward for him to tell her about it with a smile. Emo Shanshan looked into his eyes and said with a faint smile, "Should I thank you for helping me chase away one of my suitors? Or are you just proud of making me yearn for you and live alone for the rest of my life?" Ning Kei's body stiffened slightly, and he did not know how to reply. The most troublesome thing is that everyone in the world knows about this. Then, how do you think the world will look at me? And how will they look at the way you look at me? Emo Shanshan said shyly, "Since it's not feasible, it's not appropriate for you to be like this." I was wrong, I was really wrong. I shouldn't have done that at that time. Ning Ke turned sideways and bowed deeply to her. He apologized. I have been making mistakes since then. I hope you can forgive me. His apology was very sincere, a rare sincerity. However, Emo Shanshan was not happy. Her clear eyes rippled slightly, and she was a little disappointed and sour. She forced a smile and said, Tao Addict is right. You are the most shameless person in the world. You admit your mistakes faster than anyone else. You are so sincere that you always make people feel that others are wrong and you are the innocent one. Ning Ke was silent. Only then did he realize that no matter how elegant and refined a woman was, once she was troubled by something, she was no different from any other woman in the world. She would always find countless reasons to be angry. Of course, he knew that he could only accept it because he was indeed wrong. After thinking for a while, he said seriously, in order to make my apology more sincere, I have decided to do one thing. Emo Shanshan asked, what is it? Ning Ke said with a smile, after Sang Sang recovers, I will rush back to Chong and as fast as possible and then go to Grand Secretary Wang's mansion to get the chicken soup calligraphy back. I will then send it to you. Emo Shanshan said with a smile, there are already many of your calligraphy pieces in the study beside the ink lake. Ning Ke felt a little helpless and asked, then what can I do to make you happy? Emo Shanshan looked into his eyes and said, there are no notes you wrote to me in the study beside the ink lake. This was a request that had been repeated many times. She felt that she had belittled herself and was ashamed. Her cheeks gradually turned red, but she still looked into his eyes bravely and firmly. Ning Ke did not dare to look into her eyes. He looked at the mountain stream in front of him and remained silent. Emo Shanshan sighed in her heart and said nothing more. She looked at the mountain stream calmly and silently. The mountain scenery was extremely beautiful in autumn. The mountain stream was quiet, and there was a faint sound of water. There was no sound by the stream. The speculations of the cultivators under the big tree all pointed to the same person. This riddle was indeed very simple. The calligraphy addict had been around for many years. In all the stories she had left behind, there was only one man who could stand side by side with her and watch the mountain scenery without saying a word. As the person who had already guessed Ning Ke's identity spoke, the speculation became reality. People were sure that the man standing beside the calligraphy addict was the legendary Mr. 13 of the Academy, Ning Ke. Soft gasps of shock sounded in the crowd. No matter how hard they tried to suppress it, they could not control their reactions. Looking at the two figures by the stream, the crown prince of the South Jin Kingdom's face was livid. His hands that were exposed outside his sleeves trembled with anger and jealousy. No matter how much he wanted to maintain his poise, he could not control his emotions. After a moment of silence, someone finally could not help but walk towards the stream. With someone taking the lead, naturally more people followed. In an extremely short period of time, the big tree became empty. The previously crowded stone chessboard suddenly became extremely quiet. The South Jin Kingdom player who was sitting on one side of the chessboard was deep in thought and did not notice. However, the yellow-robed old monk from the Lang Temple who was in charge of judging the endgame noticed it. He raised his head in surprise and glanced at the stream. When the cultivator under the tree took the first step, Ning Ke felt it. He turned around and saw dozens of cultivators walking towards him. He could not help but be stunned. He quickly calculated how he and Emo Shanshan should deal with these people when they rushed over so that they would not be pushed down the mountain stream. Then, he glanced at the black horse carriage and confirmed that the big black horse was on guard. Only then did he relax. The cultivators did not really push Ning Ke down the mountain stream. Instead, they acted with propriety. It could even be said that they had a natural sense of awe. When they were still several feet away from the stream, they stopped at the same time. Taoist Li from the Kingdom of Song greets Mr. 13. Junior Lin Ruoyu greets seniors from the Academy. I am Hua Ying greets Sir Ning on behalf of my teacher. Everyone bowed to Ning Ke respectfully. Some were reserved, some were excited, some were trembling, and some were so excited that their tones changed. It could be felt that everyone was very excited. This was the world of Hao Yin. Hao-Ian Taoism naturally had a supreme position in the cultivation world. Most of the cultivators who came to the Wa mountain behind the Lang Temple today were also cultivators. However, the subtle confrontation between Hao-Ian Taoism and the Academy happened in the dark shadows of history. It happened between the truly powerful cultivators who could summon wind and rain. It had nothing to do with these ordinary cultivators. They only knew that the back of the mountain of the Academy was the legendary unknown place. The core disciples of the headmaster of the Academy in the back of the mountain were the legendary, unworldly, sublime beings. To the cultivators of the world, the so-called unworldly sublime beings always walked in the clouds. They occasionally appeared in the mortal world, but it was difficult to find them. Most cultivators would never have the chance to meet these true, unworldly sublime beings. Even among all the unknown places, the Academy was the only place connected to the mortal world. However, cultivators outside of the Tang Empire basically had no chance to meet the disciples of the back of the mountain of the Academy. Today, they finally saw them. They were not watching the unworldly sublime beings fly across the sky on their swords. They were so close to them that they could even speak to them. How could they not be excited? Regardless of whether this lucky chance would bring them any benefits on the long road of cultivation, at least they could recall the story of 1 year in the Lang Temple on the Wa Mountain to their juniors and disciples before they returned to the glory of Hao-Ian in the future. They could proudly and contentedly talk about how approachable Mr. 13 of the Academy was at that time. Ning Ke never felt that he was an unworldly sublime being. After he finally succeeded in entering the second floor of the Academy, he still went to the House of Red Sleeves to drink and chat with his neighbors on the Lin 47th Street. He brought the students from the front yard out to the north to the frontier fortress. He did not know how many people in the world had interacted with him. Although he clearly felt that the world's attitude towards him had gradually changed over the years, he did not care much because he still lived in the world and did not live in seclusion. This had something to do with him being the one who entered the human realm from the Academy, but it was also because of his own experience and temperament. If he really wanted to enter the human realm, he would have to cut ties with the world. However, before he succeeded in his revenge, he could not tear away the inextricable ties between himself and the mortal world. Even if he killed Xiaohou, this situation did not seem to change much. Therefore, looking at the respectful and even reverent expressions of these foreign cultivators and the excitement in their eyes, Ning Ke was stunned for a moment before he came to his senses. He showed a gentle smile and calmly returned the greeting to these cultivators. Although his expression was calm, his heart was not. He had always been very clear about the status of the Academy in the cultivation world. However, when he entered the human realm in the past, the people he dealt with were either lunatics or terrifyingly powerful seniors. Therefore, it was not until this moment that he truly felt the power of the Academy and the respect or reverence that cultivators had for the Academy. Whether it was respect or reverence, it was a very good feeling. Although this was the world of Hao-Ian and there were many cultivators, the Tang Empire was, after all, the strongest country in the world. Naturally, there were also cultivation sects that were deeply influenced by the Tang Empire and thought that they were close to the Academy. A sword master from the Great River Kingdom did not hesitate to call himself a junior disciple of the same sect. He knelt in front of Ning Ke and bowed deeply. Then he stood up and consciously stood next to Mo Shanshan, a proud expression on his face. This behavior was naturally a little ridiculous, but most cultivators did not laugh. They felt that it was natural. If they were also cultivators from the Great River Kingdom, they would probably kneel even faster than that person. Although the calligraphy addict was charming, who would not want to ride on her coattails? Moreover, they could be close to the sublime being of the Academy as a member of her family. However, in the end, there was still someone who could not stand it and let out a sneer, instantly breaking the atmosphere by the mountain stream. The cultivators were still bowing and a mess looked back in shock, wondering who was so bold. The person who dared to laugh at this moment was naturally not afraid of the Academy. The West Hill Divine Palace did not send anyone here today, and the monks from the Lang Temple were still at the foot of the mountain for some reason. The only people present who were qualified to confront the Academy, or rather, thought that they were qualified to confront the Academy, were the disciples of the Sword Garret of South Gene Kingdom. Ever since the Sage of Sword Liu Bai appeared and was recognized by the cultivation world as the strongest in the world, the South Gene Kingdom, which thought that it was the second strongest country in the world, became increasingly arrogant. Sometimes, they even looked down on the Tang Empire. As for the disciples of the Sword Garret who were under Liu Bai, they were often known for their arrogance when they walked in the cultivation world. However, people guessed wrong. Even the disciples of the Sword Garret did not dare to show any disrespect to the people from the Academy. Even if they hated the Academy because of Liu Yiqing's tragic death, their hatred was a hatred of respect. The person who laughed was indeed from the South Gene Kingdom. However, he was not a disciple of the Sword Garret. He was the crown prince of the South Gene Kingdom. After confirming Ning Kei's identity, the crown prince of the South Gene Kingdom started to get angry. His eyes were filled with hatred because of jealousy. Although he knew what the Academy meant to the Tang Empire, and even he should not provoke them, he could not stand it anymore when he saw the cultivators acting so servile in front of Ning Quebec. The crowd gradually parted, and the crown prince of the South Gene Kingdom walked out. Looking at Mo Shanshan's figure, his expression became slightly better. He said in a low voice, "How can such a fickle person be qualified to stand beside you, O master? The chess master I brought is a national player in the palace. He is about to solve the chess game. You can come with us to the mountain later." It was dead silent by the mountain stream. The cultivators had complicated expressions on their faces. Many wanted to laugh, but did not dare to. As a result, their expressions were especially strange and interesting. In the past few years, the most famous love story in the world was no longer the innocent childhood sweetheart story between the flower addict of the Yuelin Kingdom and Prince Longqing. Instead, it was the melodramatic love triangle story between the Academy's Ning Kei, the calligraphy addict of the Great River Kingdom, and the little handmaiden Sang Sang. This story had long spread throughout the countries and was deeply rooted in people's hearts. In the beginning, Sang Sang's image in the story was very faint. No one knew who the little handmaiden was, and they could not understand why Ning Kei insisted on choosing her instead of making the calligraphy addict sad and disappointed. As a result, everyone began to feel indignant for the calligraphy addict. However, as time passed, many secrets were no longer secrets. The cultivation world finally knew that the little handmaiden Sang Sang was the only successor of the former great divine priest of light. Especially when the West Hill Divine Palace officially announced the title of Lady of Light a few months ago, the situation immediately changed. At least in the eyes of the people, the little handmaiden Sang Sang finally had an equal position with the calligraphy addict in the story. As a result, the story became even more interesting. As the crown prince of the South Gene Kingdom criticized in a low voice, the cultivators present remembered this famous love story. Naturally, they also remembered the rumor that the Lady of Light would always be by Ning Kei's side. Only then did they remember that there was a black horse carriage by the stone platform. The crowd turned to look at the black horse carriage. Their gazes became different. They were even more reserved than when they looked at Ning Quebec. The fear in their eyes was clearly much stronger. Someone was the first to come to his senses. He hurried to the black horse carriage and knelt down. Just like what was said before, the cultivators all respected the West Hill Divine Palace. It was the same beside the mountain stream. The cultivators hurried to the black horse carriage and knelt down on the ground. The crowd worshipped devoutly. "Welcome, Lady of Light, to the kingdom of the human world." Sang Sang's calm voice came from the horse carriage. "Rise." Ning Kei smiled. He did not expect the girl's voice to be so reserved and dignified. The cultivators all stood up as if relieved of a heavy burden. They still maintained their respectful posture. Even though their knees were covered in grass and dust, no one dared to pat them. Looking at this scene, the South Gene Kingdom prince's expression grew uglier. He only then realized that even the people around Ning Kei were of a higher status than him. If the little handmaiden in the horse carriage became the great divine priest of light in the future, Wouldn't her status be even higher than his father's? He did not expect that what would happen next would make him even angrier and more helpless. Song Song's voice came from the horse carriage again. "Miss Calligraphy Addict, are you willing to accompany me up the mountain?" The South Gene Kingdom Prince's expression suddenly changed. The cultivator's expressions suddenly became extremely interesting. Ning Kei's heart suddenly tightened. He knew Sang Sang very well. He knew that Sang Sang had addressed Mo Shan Shan as the Hill Master, and now she addressed her as Miss Calligraphy Addict. What was the meaning behind these words? Although there was no malice, he did not know if it would make the other girl unhappy. Mo Shan Shan was not unhappy, but her smile was a little bitter. She vaguely guessed why Sang Sang had asked her to board the horse carriage. It was probably because of what the South Gene Kingdom Crown Prince had said earlier. The South Gene Kingdom Crown Prince had said that Ning Kei was a fickle person. Sang Sang wanted to prove that this had nothing to do with Ning Quebec. This was her business. The South Gene Kingdom Crown Prince invited the calligraphy addict up the mountain. Sang Sang then invited the calligraphy addict up the mountain. At the same time, she invited the calligraphy addict to slap the South Gene Crown Prince's face. In order to help her young master vent his anger and to maintain his imposing manner and glory in front of the cultivators in the world, Sang Sang was willing to do many things, including this invitation that she did not like. Mo Shan Shan sighed softly. She thought that it was unimaginable for Sang Sang to think about Ning Kei all the time and to make Ning Kei happy, even if she had to sacrifice herself. If it were her, would she be able to do it? It only took a moment for her to think. Sang Sang had already done so much for Ning Kei's sake. Mo Shan Shan thought to herself, so what if I took the initiative to take a step towards the black horse carriage? Everyone watched as the calligraphy addict entered the black horse carriage. Then they looked at Ning Kei with different gazes. Apart from respect, there was also a lot of envy. Ning Kei knew that this was not the truth. It did not mean anything that the two girls were in the same horse carriage. However, he naturally would not explain anything. He walked to the front of the carriage and patted the big black horse lightly to signal for it to set off. The black horse carriage slowly moved. Ning Kei sat on the cushion in front of the carriage and looked at the South Gene Crown Prince's gloomy and ugly face. He suddenly felt a little happy, but it was not enough. Because the purpose of this trip was to treat Song Song's illness, he did not want to cause any more trouble. That was why he was indifferent to the verbal conflict they had in the Lang Temple yesterday morning, or the Crown Prince's mockery and criticism. It was completely unlike his usual low-key silence. However, he would still be unhappy in the end. When a black horse carriage passed by the South Gene Crown Prince, it suddenly stopped. Ning Kei looked at the ugly expression on the South Gene Crown Prince's face and sighed, wrinkling the spring water. Just as he finished speaking, someone laughed. Even the cultivators who were afraid of the South Gene Kingdom did not laugh, but they were also winking. After all, this was someone else's matter. The Lady of Light had let the calligraphy addict into the horse carriage. Even if you were the noble South Gene Crown Prince, what right do you have to interfere? You like the calligraphy addict, but she does not like you. You want to stir up the relationship between the calligraphy addict and Mr. 13 of the Academy, but the Lady of Light did not say anything. Well, why do you have to do so? This was really like ruffling a pond of spring water. What did it have to do with you? The South Gene Crown Prince's entourage and the disciples of the Sword Garret would not laugh, but they were not angry either. Instead, they lowered their heads in shame. To them, the Crown Prince had brought this upon himself. The black horse carriage moved again and slowly passed by the South Gene Crown Prince. Then, Ning Kei's unfinished sentence sounded. None of your damn business. The South Gene Crown Prince was already trembling with anger. When he heard this vulgar word, his vision darkened and he almost fainted. Ning Kei lifted the curtains and saw that Sang Sang looked well, so he was not worried. However, he was extremely worried when he saw her and Shan Shan sitting opposite each other in silence. He comforted himself and kicked the big black horse's rump, signaling for it to hurry up. However, the black horse carriage was stopped in front of the jumping tiger stream before it could cross the bridge. It was not the South Gene Crown Prince who stopped the carriage, but a very cold sentence. Even the disciples of the Academy have to follow the rules. Is this how the headmaster of the academy teaches his students? The yellow-robed old monk beside the stone puppet under the big tree slowly raised his head and said in a slow voice. The black horse carriage stopped in front of the bridge. Ninkei was silent for a moment. He did not like to hear such old-fashioned words, especially when they used their teacher to pressure him. However, because Sang Sang needed help from the Lang Temple, he did not show his disgust. He looked at the old monk and asked, "What rules?" The yellow-robed old monk slowly stood up and said, "You can only cross the bridge after you solve the game." Ninkei shook his head and said, "Rules are dead, but people are alive." He had said this to the calligraphy addict earlier. However, the yellow-robed old monk said, "People are alive only when they stick to the rules." There was a certain philosophy in this sentence. Ninkei did not know if the old monk knew that his real purpose of bringing Sang Sang into the mountain was to cure her illness, so he used this sentence to threaten him. He frowned slightly and said, "Do you want my teacher to solve the game before you can see Master Qishan?" The yellow-robed old monk's expression did not change. He said, "If the headmaster of the academy came personally, senior brother Qishan would have come to welcome him. However, the headmaster of the academy can ignore all the rules in the world, but you, as his disciple, do not have the right to do so." Ninkei looked at the old monk's eyes and suddenly said, "The Buddhism sect emphasizes that all beings are equal. Humans, pigs, and dogs are the same. Even if the difference between my teacher and me is like that between a stupid pig and a human, I am still equal to my teacher. If my teacher doesn't follow the rules, why should I?" The yellow-robed old monk said indifferently, "The academy's disciples are indeed good at arguing. It's just that I don't want to listen when I don't want to." Ninkei said, "So in the end, it still comes down to who has the stronger fist. The rules of your temple can only stop those who do not have the ability to break the rules." The yellow-robed old monk frowned slightly and said, "Does Mr. 13 think that you have the ability to surpass the rules of the world?" Ninkei said, "I want to try." After saying this, he reached into the horse carriage. Sang Sang had already opened the arrow box and assembled the iron bow. Ninkei took the iron bow, knocked an arrow, and pointed it at the yellow-robed old monk. Then he said, "Do you want to try?" "I worked on it for half a day in the afternoon, but I still could not finish it. I hired a craftsman and finally finished it very late. Then I disconnected the internet and started writing. I was so excited that I forgot the time. This chapter has 7,000 words, and there are still 5,000 left today. Keep up the good work. Please support me for monthly votes and recommendation votes. I really need some stimulation now. Thank you." To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 553. Ninkei's movement of taking the iron bow was very natural, and so was his movement of knocking the arrow. His expression was very calm, as if he was eating with chopsticks. However, when he pulled the iron bow and aimed the dark and cold arrowhead at the yellow-robed old monk by the stone table under the green tree, the quiet mountain stream was suddenly enveloped by a piercingly cold, killing intent. Looking at this scene, the yellow-garbed old monk's wrinkled face turned pale. It was not from fear, but from extreme anger and confusion. Even his monk robes began to tremble. The old monk naturally knew of Ninkei's primordial 13 arrows that shocked the cultivation world. The once powerful and perfect Prince Longqing had been shot by Ninkei with one arrow. As a senior monk living in seclusion in the Lang Temple, the old monk had never thought that his attempt to stop Ninkei from maintaining the rules of the Wa Mountain would result in such a strong, murderous aura from Ning Quebec. What made the old monk even angrier and more confused was that Ninkei's calm expression as he knocked the arrow. If he really tried to stop Ninkei, he was afraid that Ninkei would really shoot at him. How dare he do this? The cultivators were respectfully watching the black horse carriage leave and naturally saw this scene. Like the yellow-garbed old monk, they were shocked speechless. They did not understand why Ninkei would do this. Those who paid a visit to Master Qishan had to follow the rules of the Lang Temple. There had been no exceptions for decades, even for the divine Lord Lotus. Even if you were a core disciple of the headmaster of the academy and felt that accepting such a test would damage the reputation of the academy, it was fine if you wanted to force your way through. But why did you have to kill? Some of the older cultivators suddenly thought of some old events in the cultivation world. They thought of Mr. Ku, who had caused countless bloodshed in the world, and then remembered that Ninkei was like Mr. Ku back then. They were both disciples of the academy who had entered the human realm. They could not help but feel terrified and did not dare to look at the black horse carriage again. The sharp iron arrowhead glowed with a faint cold light, but it didn't shake at all, as if all the light was contained in the arrowhead. This could only mean that the iron arrow didn't even tremble in the slightest, that the hand holding the arrowhead was terrifyingly steady, and that the person preparing to shoot the arrow was extremely indifferent. The yellow-clothed old monk looked at the iron arrow and knew that his blood would splatter in the next moment. This was because he was already old, and the arrow was too close. There was no way for him to avoid it. A hint of fear flashed across his aged face, and then it turned into anger, and then into pain. This was the pain of many years, and then it all turned into calmness and resolution. He is indeed the one who entered the human realm from the academy. The yellow-clothed old monk looked at Ninkei and said indifferently, "You are indeed like Ku Hauren. However, I still have to abide by the rules because this world needs rules. People like you and Ku Hauren who don't want to abide by the rules can kill me, but they can't intimidate me." I don't know what painful memories youngest uncle left for you back then, but as a disciple of the academy, I have to say that youngest uncle has never been a cold-blooded person. Ninkei looked at the yellow-clothed old monk and said, "It's just that when people who don't abide by the rules meet people like you who uphold the rules, someone has to give way. For example, right now I just need you to give way." The yellow-clothed old monk said coldly, "Why is it always us who abide by the rules who give way?" Ninkei said, "Before answering this question, I think we have to first understand why you set these rules for others to abide by and why others must abide by the rules you set. In fact, you know very well that rules are only made by the strong to restrict or exploit the weak. What I admire most about youngest uncle is that he became a strong person who can ignore any rules, but he never thought of setting rules for others." The yellow-clothed old monk suddenly laughed and looked at Ning Quebec. He said sternly, "How can there be anyone in the world who can ignore any rules? Ku Hauren was finally punished by heaven, and that is a warning to you now." Hearing this, Ninkei's expression did not change, but he slowly raised his eyebrows. The disciples of the back of the mountain of the academy naturally respected the headmaster the most, but their idol would always be the youngest uncle who rode a little black donkey and carried a sword everywhere, but died young. If they heard someone disrespecting the headmaster of the academy, the disciples in the back of the mountain might even smile and not care. That was because the headmaster of the academy was a very interesting elder who could be teased. Moreover, the headmaster of the academy was still alive and well. If he was really angry, he could destroy that sect or small country himself. But if they heard someone disrespecting the youngest uncle, the disciples of the back of the mountain might really fight them to the death, because the black donkey was dead and the youngest uncle was also gone. He could no longer use his sword to speak for himself. Ninkei was the person who dared to kill the most in the world, but because of Song Song's illness, he had been silent ever since he came to the Wa Mountain. He did not want to kill people at will, which would affect Song Song's treatment. At this moment, he did not want to endure anymore. The bowstring gradually tightened between his fingers, making a slight squeaking sound, which meant that if this arrow was shot, someone would definitely die. I didn't sense anyone warning me from the dark. He looked at the yellow-garbed old monk and said, "But I am clearly warning you now that my horse carriage will go on the bridge and across the stream in a moment. If you try to stop me, I will kill you." If he wanted to kill, he would kill. If he wanted to kill, he would kill. On the field by the stream, everyone looked at Ning Kei's calm expression, and no one doubted his determination and ability. Cheng Ziqing, the powerhouse from the Sword Garret of South Jin Kingdom, who had been silent, could not help but sigh in his heart when he saw the tense atmosphere. He took 2 steps forward, wanted to stop Ning Quebec. But he only took one step and stopped, because he was shocked to find that even he could not break Ning Kei's indomitable arrow momentum at this time. The black horse carriage slowly moved towards the bridge. The yellow-garbed old monk slowly stood up, his expression calm and determined, ready to die. Who could stop this? At this moment, a crisp sound of a copper bell suddenly rang on the mountain path. The bell was crisp but not cold, and there was a gentle and compassionate aura hidden within it. Several kingfishers heard the bell and flew out of the bamboo. They landed on a mountain path and hopped towards the source of the bell, looking like devout believers worshiping the mountain. An old voice rang out. The voice was extremely sharp and full of resentment. It should have come from the mouth of an old woman. It disharmoniously broke the Buddhist realm between the mountains. The leaping kingfishers on the mountain path stopped in bewilderment. Ning Kei, you are still so cold-blooded and domineering. Is this how the Tangs do things? But don't forget, this is the Lang Temple. Do you really think that no one in the cultivation world dares to resist the tyranny of the Academy? After a while, another deep voice came from below the mountain path. The voice sounded like the bell of the ancient temple, and also like the singing of Buddha. The disappointed kingfishers on the mountain path began to jump with joy again. This is a quiet place for Buddhism. Even if you are from the Academy, how can you say that you will kill people? There are still 3,000 words left. Continue to write carefully. To be continued. If you like this work, please come Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 554. The sound of the copper bell was crisp and sweet. It could clear one's heart. Kingfishers hopped on the road to welcome the people coming down from Wa Mountain. There were more than 10 sadhus from Ueluan Kingdom, wearing bamboo hats and holding iron staffs. The old woman with wrinkles and a mean expression was naturally Aunt Cuny Matty, who had a high status in the Buddhism sect. She was still as beautiful as a flower, but obviously looked more haggard. Lu Chinjia, the flower addict, walked silently beside her. The most eye-catching thing was the light chariot in the middle of the crowd. The curtains on the chariot were embroidered with Buddhist mantras and painted with beautiful pictures of Buddhist stories. It looked extremely solemn and beautiful. No one knew who was sitting in the Buddhist chariot, but the abbot of Lang Temple and the last disciple of Elder Chishan, Monk Guan Hai, were standing respectfully by the side. Looking at the black horse carriage beside Jumping Tiger Stream and Ning Kei, who was holding the iron bow, Cuny Matty's right hand, which was holding the walking stick, had blue veins popped out. She did not know what kind of pain he had caused her. She looked old, and the hatred in her eyes grew stronger. Lu Chinjia, on the other hand, looked indifferent, as if she did not see Ning Kei at all. Looking at the people coming up from the mountain path, Ning Kei thought that if it was just Cuny Matty and the flower addict, Monk Guan Hai would not have to leave his wife behind to welcome them personally. So his gaze fell on the Buddhist chariot, and he guessed that the monk in the chariot was not an ordinary person. He might even be from Xiankong Temple. When the cultivators saw that it was Aunt Cuny Matty and the flower addict, they all bowed and greeted them. At the same time, like Ning Kei, they guessed the identity of the person in the Buddhist chariot. How dare he speak to the disciples of the Academy in a lecturing tone? Cuny Matty nodded indifferently, returning the greeting. She was one of the most senior people in the cultivation world, and she had earned her reputation because of her age. Naturally, she did not need to exchange pleasantries with these juniors. Moreover, her attention was always on Ning Quebec. If the hatred in her eyes could turn into flying knives, Ning Kei would have already been pierced by her eyes and bleeding profusely. The flower addict, Lu Chinjia, remained indifferent and silent. No matter how respectful the cultivators were, she did not respond. It was as if the world around her did not exist. Seeing that Ning Kei was still aiming at the yellow-robed old monk, the deep and majestic voice came from the Buddhist chariot again. It sounded extremely strict. Soldiers are inauspicious. Put it down now. After a moment of silence, Ning Kei loosened the tight bowstring and moved the arrowhead slightly. No longer being targeted by the iron arrow, the yellow-clothed old monk suddenly felt that the piercingly cold killing intent that had enveloped him had disappeared without a trace. Only then did he realize that his monk robe was already wet with sweat. Only then did he understand his previous fear and could not help but smile bitterly. Seeing this scene, the cultivators who were still nervous immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Kunimati looked at Ninkei and said in a hoarse voice, "The Academy only knows how to bully the weak." Suddenly, her resentful and mocking voice came to an abrupt halt, because the iron arrow in Ninkei's hand was aimed at the Buddhist chariot. In Kunimati's view, the eminent monk in the Buddhist chariot would definitely be able to shock the Academy. She had wanted to take this opportunity to humiliate Ninkei, but she did not expect Ninkei to be so tough. She scolded sternly, "Ninkei, how dare you?" From hearing the crisp copper bell coming from the mountain path and the deep Buddhist voice, Ninkei knew that a real sublime being from the Buddhism sect had arrived. He even vaguely guessed the person's origin. But so what? Of course the Academy likes to bully the weak. But in fact, we prefer to smash the seemingly hardest things, whether it's the rules or those who like to put on airs. Ninkei aimed the iron arrow at the shadow of the monk in the Buddhist chariot and said, "There are so many people by the stream today. It seems that the master has the highest state and the toughest means. I wonder if you dare to take an arrow from me." The bowstring was tightened again, and the iron arrow was ready to be shot again. However, this time when Ninkei pulled the bow, it was completely different from when he had aimed at the yellow-robed old monk. An extremely powerful aura was slowly released from his body. The kingfishers, who were jumping happily under the Buddhist chariot and intoxicated by the benevolent aura of the eminent monk in the chariot, sensed this powerful and cold aura. They uttered a few frightened cries and flapped their wings, flying into the green bamboo and disappearing. The autumn wind gradually blew and the big green tree swayed restlessly. The dense branches and leaves rustled and were affected by the aura of the iron arrow in Ninkei's hand. Hundreds of green leaves fell and fell around the black horse carriage. As this powerful aura appeared on Ninkei, the cultivators with high states on the hill suddenly changed their expressions. Chung Ziqing, the powerhouse from the sword garret, who was in a knowing destiny state, had the strongest reaction. His slender hands moved randomly and unconsciously. Stimulated by this aura, he held the air in a semicircle and had a strong impulse to unsheathe his sword. Kunimati's expression became extremely ugly. She had vaguely guessed something, but she could not believe that Ninkei, whom she hated the most, had such a lucky chance. Monk Guanhai knew Ninkei's temperament and said in shock, "Senior Brother 13, quickly put down the arrow. The master is the president of the commandment yard of the Xiankong Temple. You must not act rashly." With these words, there was an uproar. Everyone was extremely shocked and could not believe what they had heard. The unknown place was a legend in the cultivation world. It was extremely difficult for ordinary cultivators to see them. But today, in the Wa Mountain, they had seen the disciples of the back of the mountain of the Academy, and then people from the Xiankong Temple. It was really unbelievable. If the Academy was said to be a place connecting the two worlds, and everyone knew that it was located in the south of Chang and city, they would occasionally have the opportunity to see the unworldly sublime beings in the back of the mountain. However, the Jishou Abbey of the Haotian Taoism sect and the Xiankong Temple of the Buddhism sect had only appeared in the classics and rumors. Basically, no one had seen them. Everyone looked at the Buddhist chariot and thought in shock, could it really be the eminent monks of the Xiankong Temple behind the curtain? Would the Yulan hungry ghost meeting of the Lang Temple attract so many unworldly sublime beings? It was natural for people to be excited. However, at this time, no one walked to the Buddhist chariot to greet Ninkei like they did before, because the Buddhist chariot was being aimed at by an iron arrow. Hearing Monk Guanhai's words, Ninkei's expression did not change at all. His left hand that was holding the iron bow was as steady as the thousand-year mountain stream. He calmly and attentively waited for the person in the Buddhist chariot to reply. The Academy versus the Xiankong Temple. Mr. 13 versus the president of the commandment yard. Just these names were enough to shock the cultivation world. The cultivators by the mountain stream subconsciously suppressed their urge to exclaim and watched the scene nervously. Even their breathing slowed down. The confrontation between the unknown place actually happened in the mortal world. To be able to witness such a battle with their own eyes was enough to make ordinary cultivators go crazy. How could they not be excited and nervous? It was unusually quiet by the mountain stream. Only the mournful cries of the kingfishers in the bamboo forest could be heard, as well as the soft hoofbeats of the horses that were scattered on the grass. They were waiting for the deep voice to ring out from the Buddhist chariot again. They were looking forward to how the person from the Xiankong temple in the Buddhist chariot would face the arrow from the academy. For a long time, no sound came from the Buddhist chariot. The autumn wind ruffled the green leaves. The eminent monk of Xiankong temple remained silent. Ning Ke asked him if he dared to take an arrow from him. The monk of Xiankong temple did not answer. He didn't dare to. Ning Ke was not surprised by the Buddhist chariot silence. For ordinary cultivators in the world, Xiankong temple had a legendary status, and they had an innate reverence for it. But he came from the academy and had seen the monks of the Xiankong temple, so he treated them calmly. From the moment he heard the sound of the copper bell, he had been trying to determine the level of the other party's cultivation. He did not know what kind of place the commandment yard was, nor did he know the position of the president of the commandment yard in the temple. But he was sure that the president of the commandment yard was not as powerful as the legendary chief preaching monk of the Xiankong temple. The Buddhism sect did not have the theory of the 5 states of cultivation, but there was the profound meaning of enlightenment. After listening to these 2 sentences, he was sure that this person from the Xiankong temple must be someone who was enlightened. If he were to compare it to the state of cultivation, he would at least be in the knowing destiny state. If it were Ning Ke in front of the Red Lotus Temple, he would definitely turn around and run when faced with a powerhouse at the knowing destiny state. However, in that autumn rain, he had already entered the knowing destiny state. This Xiankong temple monk state of cultivation should be a little higher than Prince Longqing's. But in terms of evil and horrifying skills, and in terms of cunning and practical methods, he was probably not as good as Longqing. After Ning Ke entered the knowing destiny state, ordinary cultivators in the knowing destiny state would not be able to take on his primordial 13 arrows without preparation. Moreover, he had been silent for too long after coming to the Wa Mountain. Today he had drawn about twice, but had not shot it. This arrow was the one that he was most eager to shoot. If Longqing were to reappear here, he would not be able to take on this arrow. So he was sure that the Xiankong temple monk in the Buddhist chariot would not be able to take it either. Then the other party would not dare to take it. Looking at the Buddhist chariot that had been silent for a long time, Ning Ke said with a smile, "Since you dare not take it, then please continue to remain silent. If you dare not take it, then continue to remain silent." The kingfisher, hiding in the bamboo, seemed to understand Ning Ke's words. It was so frightened that it did not dare to chirp. The horses on the grassy slope also stopped in fear. It was really silent. Kitty Maddie could not believe what she had seen. She even looked a little desperate. The flower addict, who had always been indifferent and ignorant, could not help but look at Ning Ke standing on the black horse carriage. Her eyes were extremely complicated. There was dead silence beside the mountain stream. Everyone present was shocked and could not believe their eyes. Because of Ning Ke's tyrannical power, and also because of the Academy's power, he had actually forced the Xiankong temple monk to remain silent. This shocked everyone present, and no one dared to respond. He has cultivated for 3 years and entered the knowing destiny state. How can there be such an unreasonable thing in the world? Cheng Ziqing, the powerhouse from the Sword Garret of South Jin Kingdom, looked at Ning Ke standing on the black horse carriage against the autumn wind. He murmured in a slightly hoarse voice, "Senior brother, you once said that the headmaster of the academy is as tall as several stories. Now it seems that there is no building as tall as the headmaster of the academy in the world. What is more frightening is that there are several more tall buildings in the academy." To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 555. The wind blew through the trees, and the mountain stream was silent. Everyone was shocked speechless. The curtains around the Buddhist chariot fluttered, and the figure in monk's robe could be vaguely seen. The high monk of Xiankong Temple remained silent. It was not until today, when he faced the cold iron arrow, that he realized that the arrow was more terrible than it was rumored to be. The bowstring divided the world before Ning Kei's eyes into two. He looked at the monk in the Buddhist chariot, which was cut by the bowstring and aimed at by the arrowhead. He said, "In the eyes of the world, Xiankong Temple is a sacred unknown place. Moreover, you are far away in the West Wilderness and rarely enter the human world, so you are even more mysterious. But you seem to have forgotten that I am from the Academy. To me, Xiankong Temple is not mysterious at all. From the beginning, I knew you were from Xiankong Temple. But so what? I have seen 2 monks from Xiankong Temple. One of them was killed by me, and the other is now blind. I don't know where he is in the world. I heard that the wayfarer of the Buddhism sect once went to Chang. Is he your senior brother? He should be much stronger than you. But he was still driven away by my eldest brother." Hearing that Ning Kei had killed a monk from Xiankong Temple, the cultivators were even more shocked. Those from the Buddhism sect who knew the inside story of the duel in front of the bun shop on Morning Street all had complicated expressions on their faces. Cuny Mattie's face was even paler, and she seemed to be about to faint in grief. Ning Kei did not pay attention to the reactions of the people present. He looked at the monk in the Buddhist chariot and continued, "So, I don't understand. Although you are the president of the commandment yard of Xiankong Temple, what gives you the confidence to talk nonsense in front of me, a disciple of the Academy? What gives you the right to comment on the actions of the Academy?" The Academy had shocked everyone without shooting an arrow, and forced the eminent monk in the Buddhist chariot to remain silent without moving the iron bow. The Academy had already gained great glory in this confrontation. Under the premise that the situation had been settled, Ning Kei's extremely arrogant question would undoubtedly humiliate the Xiankong Temple and even the entire Buddhism sect. The Tang had an unyielding temperament. They were not afraid of the bitter wine of defeat, nor would they be stingy with the pride brought by victory. This unique temperament made the Tang, whether on the battlefield or in diplomatic settings, often seem aggressive to their opponents, even somewhat crude. As for the back of the mountain of the Academy, because of youngest uncle and Mr. Second's reputation, his image in the cultivation world had always been extremely arrogant. Therefore, even though the cultivators beside the stream were shocked by Ning Kei's words and even felt embarrassed for the high monk of the Xiankong Temple in the Buddhist chariot, they were not surprised. Instead, they felt that this was how the Academy should behave. In fact, that was not the case. The 2 girls in the black horse carriage who knew Ning Kei well, and the big black horse who was in front of the carriage, all felt that Ning Kei was very different today. Ning Kei had been living in darkness and blood since he was a child. He was also very different from his peers in the Academy. In Yi Hongyu's words, he was the shame of the Academy. Beneath his casual appearance, Ning Kei was extremely cold-blooded. He would do whatever it took to survive, but he would never pursue the vanity brought by victory. After winning, he would not do anything that might bring danger to himself in order to show off his elegance. If it had been in the past, even if he had been in the wilderness and faced a high monk from the Xiankong Temple, he would never have said such words to provoke the other party after he had won and gained benefits. This meant that as he grew up, Ning Kei had been gradually changed by the fierce Tang Feng and the powerful Academy. Especially under the influence of Second Brother, he had unknowingly begun to become arrogant. Second Brother's reason was very simple. His head could be cut off and blood could flow, but the crown on his head could not be tilted at all. That would be a disgrace to the Academy and a disgrace to the Academy. Today in the Tile Mountain, Ning Kei did not really fight, but he had already shocked everyone. It could be said that he had not disgraced the Academy, nor had he tarnished the reputation of youngest uncle. But his words were not just to show the pride of the Academy. He really wanted to provoke the high monk from the Xiankong Temple in the Buddhist chariot. Because when he aimed at the Buddhist chariot and shocked everyone and forced the high monk from the Xiankong Temple to remain silent, he suddenly felt a chill in his body. It was a warning sign. After entering the knowing destiny state, cultivators would have a vague but real premonition of what they were going to encounter. This kind of premonition was vague and even hard to grasp, but it was enough to alert people. Ning-Ke did not know what the warning sign was, but he vaguely sensed that today's trip to the Tile Mountain would bring him a lot of trouble. So he did not mind killing the strongest enemy at the beginning. More importantly, this was related to Song Song's medical treatment and vaguely pointed to the Buddhist chariot. He did not hesitate to erase the warning sign. Right now, this iron arrow contained his fullest spirit, his hungriest killing intent. He knew that if he didn't shoot this arrow, then it would be very difficult for him to shoot another arrow of the same realm today. Therefore, this was his best chance. Even so, if Ning-Ke wanted to kill the high monk from the Xiankong temple, he would definitely be seriously injured or even pay a greater price. But he did not want to regret it later. There was still no response from the Buddhist chariot. One could vaguely see the high monk from the Xiankong temple sitting cross-legged behind the curtain. It seemed that he did not hear Ning-Ke at all, nor was he angry. Ning-Ke slightly raised his eyebrows. He thought of the characteristics of the Buddhism sect and Master Lotus's description of the Buddhism sect at the front gate of the Devil's Doctrine. He could not help but shiver. The high monk of the Buddhism sect was indeed as tolerant as a tortoise. Doing anything to the extreme meant that one was powerful. He had seen countless deaths since he was a child and knew the importance of patience. He naturally knew that the more tolerant the monk was, the more terrifying he would be. It was extremely quiet beside the stream. Some cultivators looked at Ning-Ke, who was aiming at the Buddhist chariot from the black horse carriage, in fear. Some cultivators looked at the Buddhist chariot nervously. No one dared to make a sound. They even deliberately slowed down their breathing, afraid that any sound would cause the string of the iron bow to loosen. The situation was extremely tense. If they did not want the Academy and Xiankong Temple to be killed, they needed someone to break the invisible and dangerous struggle between the black horse carriage and the Buddhist chariot. No one beside the mountain stream could avoid Ning-Ke's iron arrow. But someone could stop the iron arrow, not with a flying sword or prayer beads, but with their own flesh and blood. Monk Guanhai used his chest to block the dark iron arrow. The color of his face turned darker than the iron arrow. He said sadly, 13th brother, why do you have to do this? When Ning-Ke first met this young monk in Chong and City, he admired him. This was because this monk had the true calmness of the Buddhism sect. He did not pretend to be profound like other Vedanta of the Buddhism sect. Also, Monk Guanhai's skin was very dark, just like Sang Sang when she was young. If it was something else, Ning-Ke would naturally give face to Monk Guanhai. But not today. He aimed the iron arrow at the Buddhist chariot. He did not even look at Guanhai and said, "Arrows don't have eyes." Monk Guanhai said bitterly, "An arrow has no eyes, but everyone here has eyes." The president of the commandment yard has already silently admitted defeat. "Senior brother, do you still have to shoot this arrow?" Ning-Ke said, "I didn't shoot the arrow." Guanhai sighed and said, "Then what are you waiting for?" Ning-Ke said, "I am waiting for the high monk in the Buddhist chariot to stop remaining silent." Guanhai asked, "If the master keeps silent, what are you going to do, senior brother?" Ning-Ke really did not know what to do, so he kept silent. Although he was extremely vigilant towards the Buddhist chariot, and although he was the core disciple of the headmaster of the academy, he could not kill the other party with one arrow in front of so many cultivators. Sometimes, overbearingness and pride looked similar, but in fact, they were not completely similar. In second brother's words, pride was reasonable overbearingness, while overbearingness was unreasonable pride. No matter if it was evil or unreasonable, second brother had always been reasonable. That was why he thought that he was proud, but not overbearing. He also hoped that Ning-Ke could become someone like him. Previously, the high monk from the Xiankong temple and the Buddhist chariot first criticized the academy's actions, and then reprimanded Ning-Ke as a senior. No matter how Ning-Ke humiliated the other party, it was reasonable and could at least pass second brother's review. Therefore, although everyone was shocked, it did not cause any criticism. But the situation now was different. The high monk from the Xiankong temple was repeatedly humiliated, but he endured it silently. He did not show any signs of anger, nor did he intend to attack. If Ning Ke forcefully shot the arrow now, in the eyes of the world, the Academy would not be showing pride, but overbearingness. Monk Guanhai looked at Ning Ke's expression and said sincerely, "Senior brother, if you insist on fighting with the president, you must kill me first. Senior brother, don't be in a hurry to say that killing me is not a big deal. Even if you massacre the Lang Temple, you must have brought the Lady of Light to Tile Mountain today for something important. What if it comes to that?" This was not a threat, but a sincere persuasion. Not to mention that Ning Ke did not have the ability to massacre the Tile Mountain and drive the black horse carriage to the cave. Even if he was the youngest uncle back then, could he still hope that Master Qishan could cure Sang Sang after killing the monks from the Lang Temple? It was not that Ning Ke did not think of this, but he still did not understand what the warning sign that made his body suddenly turn cold when he aimed the iron arrow at the Buddhist chariot indicated. The monk from the Xiankong Temple and the Buddhist chariot remained silent and did not dare to take the arrow. Then, even if they fought again in the future, the monk's Zen heart would definitely be affected when facing Ning Quebec. The high monk from the Buddhism sect was indeed powerful and terrifying, but logically speaking, he should not be an obstacle to Ning Ke's trip to the Tile Mountain today. But the warning sign still existed, and it was even getting stronger. So Ning Ke was very uneasy. This is the first chapter. The second chapter should be completed before 11:30. Yes, only I know what the warning sign is. Arrogant, overbearing. To be continued. If you like this work, please come Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 556. Ning Ke's face was slightly cold. When he woke up, he found that there was something wrong with his mental state. Because of Song Song's illness, he had been worried for many days. He had become a little anxious and even violent. In the autumn rain at the Red Lotus Temple, when he bit off the flesh from Long Qing's neck, he had felt that violent and terrifying state of mind. He knew that if he was really controlled by this kind of emotion, he would fall into the abyss and never come back. Thinking of this, he took a deep breath and let the cool autumn wind moisten his slightly dry lungs. The Great Spirit then nourished his whole body and suppressed the dangerous, violent impulse in his state of mind. He decided not to cause any trouble before Master Qishan treated Sang Sang. As for the warning sign that the Buddhist chariot had triggered in his heart, Ning Ke thought that he had just entered the knowing destiny state. Perhaps it was just an illusion caused by his anxiety, or perhaps he hoped that it was just an illusion. He put down his arm, and the sharp arrowhead was no longer pointed at the Buddhist chariot. Then he slowly released the bowstring, accompanied by a slight sound of microstructure movement. It was no longer as frightening as if it was about to collapse a cliff. Along with this action, countless sighs of relief and exhalation rose from the stone plateau next to the stream. Previously, countless cultivators had been struggling to control their breathing and were extremely nervous. Ning Ke looked at the slightly wet ground where the iron arrow was pointing and said, "As long as you don't stop me from going up the mountain to visit Master Qishan, I can actually show enough respect to the Xiankong Temple and the Buddhism sect, even if it's fake." Monk Wanhai smiled bitterly. He thought that since the deadlock had finally been resolved, why did he have to say such words? He comforted him and said, "Although my master rarely sees guests, since he has come out of seclusion, there is no reason not to see Senior Brother 13. At this moment, the yellow-robed old monk beside the stone table and chessboard said sternly, "Reason is the rule. Guanhai, although you are the successor of Senior Brother Qishan, you have no right to disobey the rules of the Wa Mountain." Monk Wanhai was speechless for a moment. He thought to himself, rules are made by people after all. Mr. 13 of the Academy and the Lady of Light in the horse carriage are of high status. Do they really have to win 3 rounds in a row? The yellow-garbed old monk looked at Ning Ke and said in a cold voice, "The Academy is indeed powerful. Just an iron arrow, and you have forced the Vedanta of the Buddhism sect to retreat without a fight. However, as I said earlier, Kahaoran was able to charge into the Wa Mountain with a steel sword at his waist. I admit that he has the power to break the rules of the Wa Mountain. If you want to break the rules, you have to show it to me. I want to see if the person from the Academy who has entered the human realm is still as cold-blooded and ruthless as his predecessors, killing without batting an eye. Ninkei was sure that the old monk living in seclusion in the Lang Temple had an old grudge against youngest uncle. However, looking at the old monk's cultivation state, youngest uncle had not paid attention to this person when he had charged into the Wa Mountain. He could not help but shake his head and smile bitterly. He thought that it was not a good thing for the elders in the sect to be too domineering back then. In the end, the old business would fall on the younger generation. He gently plucked the bowstring, which made a clear sound. He silently thought that he would eventually have to follow in youngest uncle's footsteps. Just as Ning Kei was in a dilemma, Song Song's hesitant and unconfident voice came from the black horse carriage. "Young master, why don't you let me try?" Ning Kei knew that she was worried about him and did not want him to have another conflict with the Buddhism sect. He smiled and said, "You don't know how to play chess. Besides, it is too tiring and not good for your health." Song Song's voice came through the window and sounded again. "Young master, I know how to play chess, and I think it is very interesting. I don't think it will tire my brain." Hearing Song Song's words, Ninkei suddenly remembered the scene of gambling in the wine shops in the city of Wei. He also remembered the earnest instructions of his two senior brothers before he left the academy. He could not help but feel moved. After that, he laughed in self-ridicule as he thought to himself that he was really thinking too much. The Lang Temple was famous for its chess skills. The legendary 3 games of chess were naturally extremely difficult. The previous player from the South Jin Kingdom had thought hard for a long time and could not make a move. Even if Sang Sang had some skills in chess, how could she break the game? He shook his head and said, "The autumn wind is bone-chilling. Don't come out." If it was in the past, Sang Sang would not argue with him in front of outsiders. However, for some reason, she seemed a little stubborn today. She said, "I will watch from the carriage. Miss Shan Shan, please help me set the chess pieces." Ning Kei did not know what had happened in the carriage. Hearing Song Song's address from Hill Master to Calligraphy Addict, and then to Shan Shan, he could not help but guess. Since Sang Sang had said this, she must have gotten Mo Shan Shan's approval. So he really did not know how to reject her this time. He said, "Then let's try." Then he added, "If you feel tired, don't play. We will try again." Hearing this, Monk Wan Hai smiled bitterly. The Lang Temple's abbot looked dissatisfied, but he did not dare to say anything. The yellow-robed old monk by the stone table sat back on the stone bench with an indifferent expression. The sound of horse hooves could be heard, and the steel wheels rolled on the stone ground. The black horse carriage left the stone bridge over the jumping tiger stream silently and stopped near the stone table under the big green tree. There were dozens of vertical and horizontal lines carved on the stone table, forming a natural chessboard. The lines were deeply embedded into the stone, but they were exceptionally smooth. They must have been caused by the frequent brushing of the chess players. The dense branches and leaves of the big green tree covered the autumn sun above the Wa Mountain. There were hundreds of chess pieces on the chessboard. They did not move in the wind and shadows of the trees. They seemed scattered, but there was a hidden meaning in them. The white-haired South Jin Kingdom player had been frowning and thinking for a long time by the stone table. He held a white chess piece in his hand, but he did not put it down. Looking at the situation on the chessboard, he had not made the first move. If one was deep in the art of chess, he would naturally wander among the lines and forget everything in the world. The South Jin Kingdom chess master was thinking hard about how to solve the game and did not know what had happened by the stream. He did not even notice the arrival of Ning Kei and the high monk from the Xiankong Temple. Since the black horse carriage had arrived, there was no seat for the South Jin Kingdom chess master beside the chessboard. An official from the South Jin Kingdom came forward and asked him to leave the stone bench. The South Jin Kingdom chess master felt that he had seen a glimmer of hope. He was suddenly disturbed and became furious. He pointed at the official and cursed in grief and indignation. The autumn wind lifted the curtain, and Mo Shan Shan, who was wearing a white dress, got out of the horse carriage. She came to the stone table and bowed to the yellow-garbed old monk. Then she sat on the stone bench and said, "Can I play chess for Miss Sang Sang?" The yellow-garbed old monk did not say anything and accepted the invitation. A corner of the curtain of the horse carriage was lifted, revealing Song Song's little face. She looked at the seemingly scattered chess pieces on the stone table, and her eyes gradually brightened. The black horse carriage stopped beside the big green tree. Song Song's window faced the mountain stream, so the cultivators on the stone platform could not see her. Only the yellow-garbed old monk could. The yellow-garbed old monk was shocked to see Song Song's slightly tanned but pale and haggard face. He did not expect the legendary Lady of Light to be such an ordinary little girl. Sang Sang did not like the yellow-garbed old monk because of his unkind words to Ning Ke earlier. She did not look at the old monk's face for even a moment and just quietly looked at the stone chessboard. For some reason, Song Song's eyes became brighter and brighter. Then she cautiously asked in a low voice, "What's the prize for this game?" When Song Song's eyes became brighter and brighter, Ning Ke knew that there must be a problem, because in the past years, her eyes would only become this bright when she looked at silver. But he still did not expect Sang Sang to ask such a question. The expression on his face suddenly became extremely interesting. The calligraphy addict did not expect Sang Sang to ask if there was a prize for this game either. She could not help but be stunned and speechless. Of course, the yellow-garbed old monk was the most shocked. Decades ago, he had been in charge of the 3 games of chess on Wa Mountain and had seen many amazing players. But this was the first time he had heard someone ask what the prize was. This was a game of chess that had condensed the wisdom of the high monks of Lang Temple. This was a solemn test to meet Elder Chi Shan. But in the eyes of this little girl, it was no different from gambling in those shabby gambling stalls. The yellow-garbed old monk was slightly shocked and suddenly felt endless anger. He thought that even if this little girl was the Lady of Light from the West Hill Divine Palace, how could she humiliate the Lang Temple like this? His face was as cold as ice, and he did not answer Song Song's question. Sang Sang looked at the expressions on Ning Ke and Mo Shanshan's faces. She looked at the yellow-garbed old monk who looked as if he had lost his parents. She knew that her question was indeed inappropriate and could not help but feel a little ashamed. The cultivators all returned to the big green tree and excitedly prepared to watch the game of chess. They naturally did not dare to get too close to the stone chessboard, but they were all in a high state and could clearly see what was happening on the chessboard. Even though they could not see the true face of the Lady of Light from where they stood, they were still very excited to be able to witness the Lady of Light's first move in the human world, even if it was just a chess piece. Naturally, not everyone present was interested in this game of chess. At least the high monk of Xiankong Temple in the Buddha chariot would not watch his little handmaiden play chess after being humiliated by Ning Quebec. The Buddhist chariot moved slightly. Hunimati led the sadhus of Yueluan Kingdom. Under the guidance of the abbot of Lang Temple, they passed by the stone table and walked towards the stone bridge over jumping Tiger Stream. Ning Ke turned and happened to meet the eyes of the flower addict, Lu Qinjia. Lu Qinjia's eyes were very calm, so calm that it was a little abnormal. It was like the snow on the meadow in the wilderness, cold even though it was about to die. Even Ning Ke, who was used to seeing life and death, felt a strong chill from her eyes. He did not look at her anymore. He looked at the Buddhist chariot and said, "Stop." The Buddhist chariot stopped. Ning Ke asked, "Why can't I cross, but the master on the chariot can?" He was naturally asking the old monk in yellow beside the chessboard. The old monk in yellow frowned and said, "These guests are fellow Buddhists. Why can't they cross? If the disciples of the Buddhism sect can cross, why can't I?" Princess Qinjia believed in Buddhism when she was young, but she later entered the Revelation Institute to cultivate and worship Haoyin. Does she count as a fellow Buddhist? Ning Ke turned to look at the old monk in yellow and said, "You said that the rules are alive. Is this what you meant? I have never heard of such a shameless rule in my life. The Academy does not accept this rule either." Then he continued, "If the rules must be followed, then everyone should follow them. I don't care about the monks in Lang Temple, but as long as they are from other temples, be it White Tower Temple or Xiankong Temple, they cannot cross before we cross the bridge. There was dead silence again. Mati looked at Ning Ke with hatred. Ning Ke acted as if he did not see it, and only looked at the Buddhist chariot. Although he no longer tried to kill the high monk from Xiankong Temple, he was still vigilant. Instead of letting the monk go up the mountain first, it was better to let the monk stay in his sight so that he could deal with it. The monk in the curtain waved his hand, and the Buddhist chariot descended. Ning Ke frowned slightly. At this moment, the South Jin chess master's shocked shout rang out beside the stone chessboard. This cry contained extremely complicated emotions: shock, anger, and finally, regret. It was just like when the headmaster of academy saw a country cook in the mountains north of Yin Kingdom who dared to serve a bare paw to the guests in only 6 hours. It was also like when Ning Ke saw his companion chop off a horse gang's head with 3 blades by the Shubi Lake. Moreover, the head was badly mutilated and could not be exchanged for military merits. How can it be here? Little girl, do you even know how to play chess? Sorry, it was difficult to write. I was too engrossed in it and forgot the time. It's a little late. Please forgive me for the wordy title of the chapter. There will definitely be a 3rd chapter, but I dare not say when. See you later. To be continued. If you like this work, please come Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 557. There was a beautiful legend. This legend had nothing to do with the stone. It was said that thousands of years ago, in the early years of Daji in the West Hill Divine Palace, when the Tile Mountain was still called Steamed Bun Mountain, a woodcutter named Wang Ji entered the mountain by mistake to cut firewood. He saw a few old monks playing chess and went up to watch out of curiosity. He found that the chessboard was extremely fierce, so he forgot to leave. An old monk saw his drunken look and handed him a steamed bun. Strangely enough, after eating the steamed bun, Wang Ji no longer felt hungry. He sat by the chessboard from dawn to dusk. Dusk gradually enveloped the deep mountains, but the game of chess under the tree was not over yet. The old monk who had given him food earlier raised his head and looked at Wang Ji, saying, "If you don't leave now, you won't be able to." Wang Ji stood up reluctantly and was ready to leave. However, when he picked up the axe he used to cut firewood, he was shocked to find that the wooden handle of the axe had rotted into dust. When he walked out of the mountains and returned to his hometown, he found that all his peers had died. Only then did he realize that a day of watching chess under the tree was equivalent to 100 years in the human world. This legend spread far and wide. Later, Steamed Bun Mountain became Tile Mountain, and the old temple in the mountain was called Lang Temple because of this legend. It gradually became an official temple name. Because of this legend, chess was very popular around Tile Mountain. Both gentry and farmers learned chess from childhood. The black and white flags that Ning Ke saw in the small town in front of the mountain were closely related to this custom. The Lang Temple was named for this reason. The monks in the temple were naturally good at chess. Today, the game on the stone chessboard under the big tree was a method used by the Lang Temple to choose the fated one. It was obvious that it was extremely difficult. Therefore, Ning Ke did not expect that Sang Sang could solve this game. However, he did not expect that Sang Sang would make a big mistake with the first move, which caused the South Jin Kingdom chess master to shout angrily. The South Jin Kingdom chess master shouted loudly, and his attitude was terrible. The cultivators who were watching the game glared at him, thinking that he should be locked up in the U prison for 100 years for being so disrespectful to the Lady of Light. The cultivator's gaze did not affect the South Jin Kingdom chess master at all. He broke free from his companion's arm and rushed to the stone table. He yelled with endless regret and anger. "Even though this game can be solved, it took me an hour to figure it out. You little girl, how could you make a random move without thinking? What a mess. Do you even know how to play chess? If you don't know how to do it, what are you doing?" And Mo Shan Shan, who was sitting by the stone table, raised her head and looked at this person. Because her eyesight was not very good, she seemed somewhat perplexed. She said, "I really am not good at chess. What's the matter?" The chess master of South Jin Kingdom came to his senses and turned to look at the black horse carriage. He pointed at the white chess piece on the stone chessboard with his left hand and said angrily, "You Tangs are all straightforward people. You don't know the art of moving in a small space. You little girl, you don't even know how to play chess, so why are you randomly placing your pieces? You'll die if you make a move." Watching this person shouting at the black carriage, the cultivators who were watching the chess game around the green tree did not even bother to be angry. They were sure that this person was an idiot who was not afraid of death. Since it was a chess game played by the Son of Light, even if it was wrong, it must be wrong. How could an ordinary person like him understand it? The chess master of South Gene Kingdom had been obsessed with chess all his life. He left the chess room and went to the palace. Even when he was playing against the Emperor of South Gene Kingdom, he did not know what it meant to let go. He was really obsessed with chess. He did not know the status of the little girl in the black horse carriage in the cultivation world. As the saying goes, ignorant people are fearless. He still angrily scolded the chess master. Ning Ke shook his head and gestured to the disciples of the sword Garrett not to be nervous. Anyway, he did not think that Sang Sang could really solve the game. He only warned the chess master of South Gene Kingdom, "Keep your voice down. Don't swear." The chess master of South Gene Kingdom was startled. He recognized him as the young man he met in the Lang Temple yesterday morning. He unnaturally lowered his voice and said angrily, "Playing chess is an elegant thing. Why would I swear? Let's not talk about the disturbance on the chessboard." The yellow-clothed old monk sat opposite the chessboard, his expression calm and indifferent. He had been studying chess for his entire life, especially the game under the tree. He had thought about it for many years and repeated the game more than 1,000 times. At this moment, looking at the new white chess piece on the chessboard, he was sure that the white chess piece had fallen into an irreversible dead end because of this move, just like the chess master of South Gene Kingdom. This game was called Luanka, after the messy pile of firewood. When there was no external force, the messy pile of firewood seemed stable, but in fact, it was on the verge of collapsing. To solve this game, one had to rearrange the order of the firewood in the pile while ensuring that it did not collapse. One could imagine the difficulty of this. Earlier, Sang Sang had whispered the position in the carriage window, and the calligraphy addict had placed her chess piece according to her words. The white chess piece went straight to the empty space at the bottom of the complicated game. It was as if someone had unreasonably reached out and pulled out the thickest firewood from the bottom of the pile. It looked tough, but in fact, it had completely destroyed the barely stable state of balance of the pile of firewood. The pile of firewood had collapsed on the ground. The old monk in yellow said, "This game is over." Since the cultivators who had come to visit Master Chishan wanted to see him, they were naturally very confident in chess, or they had brought companions who were good at it. When they heard this, they carefully examined the situation on the chessboard and could not help but realize that the chess master of South Gene Kingdom was right. The white chess piece could no longer be saved. When they thought of how the Lady of Light's first move had ended so hastily, they looked at the black horse carriage with complicated gazes. However, they still did not dare to show any doubt or disrespect. It was quiet by the mountain stream, and the atmosphere became a little awkward. However, at this moment, Sansan's voice came from the black horse carriage again. "This game is really interesting." The curtains moved slightly, and Sang Sang whispered 2 numbers. Just like every time before Ning Ke shot an arrow, she would say 2 numbers as if she did not even need to think. Mo Shan Shan, who was sitting in front of the chessboard, was slightly startled. She took out a white chess piece from the urn and placed it somewhere on the chessboard. The old monk in yellow frowned slightly. He did not expect that the Lady of Light in the black horse carriage would still insist when the white chess piece was bound to lose. To him, this was not the style of a chess player. The chess master from South Gene Kingdom seemed to have discovered something. He moved closer to the chessboard and stared at the seemingly ordinary white chess piece, as if he had seen something strange. He said with a slightly strange expression, "This seems interesting." The old monk in yellow also discovered the strange position of the white chess piece and could not help but think of the past. His cold expression gradually became warm, and he said with a smile, "Interesting. Sang Sang was a very smart girl." In Ning Kei's words, she was just too lazy to think about things and was used to relying on her body. That was why she seemed a little dull, even when she was chopping firewood. Since she was born to be too lazy to think, when did she start to feel that playing chess was interesting? It all started from 2 years ago. At that time, Ning Kei was far away in the wilderness, and Chen Pippi often went to the old brush pen shop on Lin 47th Street to take care of Sang Sang. Chen Pippi had heard from Ning Kei that Sang Sang was the real genius. How could he be convinced? Thus, he started several competitions that no one knew about. At the beginning, Chen Pippi competed with Sang Sang in memory, and he lost. Then he played chess with Sang Sang, but the old man Wei Guangming went back to the old brush pen shop, and Master Yin Sei came again. After that, the story that made people sigh with emotion happened. But that was the first time Sang Sang played chess. She learned the rules on the chessboard from that day onwards. Since then, Chen Pippi had never beaten her again. Sang Sang and Chen Pippi had a bet when they played chess. Every time Sang Sang won a game, she would get some benefits. Therefore, she began to feel that playing chess was a very interesting thing. This was also the reason why she had carefully asked the yellow-clothed old monk about the stakes of this game of chess. As the saying goes, habit makes nature. After that, Sang Sang cooked for Ning Kei in the back mountain of the academy. When she was cooking for the headmaster of the academy and other senior brothers and sisters, she would occasionally meet fifth brother and eighth brother, who were crazy about chess, and she was dragged to play dozens of games. On the journey to the Lang Temple, when she was sick, she would spend time with the chess manuals given by the two senior brothers. Fifth brother of the academy once said that Sang Sang's talent in chess was far better than Ning Kei's. But she did not know how talented she was and how good she was at chess. But she found chess more and more interesting. Even if it was a pity that there was no bet, it was still very interesting. Under the big green tree, the chess master of South Jin Kingdom shook his head regretfully and said, "Although it is interesting, it is still not possible." The endgame was called blank. Sang Sang placed the second piece, corresponding to the first piece. Instead of pulling out the thickest piece of firewood from the pile, she used that piece of firewood to scatter all the firewood on top of it. This was not pulling the firewood from under the pot, but it was more like pulling the firewood from under the pot. She completely messed up the chess position and then found another way. This method of rebuilding after total destruction seemed to be a feasible method. It was in line with the profits and losses of Haotian Taoism and had the courage to survive in the face of death. However, in this game, the black chess had the upper hand. It was so strong that it could directly crush the white chess. How could it withstand the opponent's attack, even if the chess position was messed up? More importantly, even if the white chess could withstand the attack of the black chess, how could it rebuild its chess position? The yellow-clothed monk did not say anything. Although he also felt that the white chess was interesting, he was sure that the white chess could not walk out of the dead in the moment he saw it. The white chess pieces were scattered all over the board, like firewood scattered on the ground. It was absolutely chaotic and disorderly. To regroup it into an orderly state required a huge amount of calculation. The amount of calculation was not something that humans could do. Even the great divine priest of revelation of the West Hill Divine Palace, who was famous for his mathematics, could not do it. This had nothing to do with intelligence or talent in chess. It was the rule of the world itself. That rule was that human strength was limited. No matter how smart or talented a person was, there was still a limit to what their mind could hold. Decades ago, the yellow-clothed monk had tried this method. He did not sleep and thought hard for 3 whole months, but he still could not complete the calculation. He did not even see the dawn of success. It was then that he realized that this solution seemed reasonable, but in fact, it did not make sense at all, because this was not a solution that humans could complete, unless the person playing chess could ignore the rules of the world. It was extremely quiet under the big green tree. Only the crisp sound of chess pieces landing on the stone chessboard could be heard. In the black horse carriage, Sang Sang said softly, and a white chess piece landed. There were already 7 or 8 white chess pieces on the chessboard. The yellow-clothed monk compared it with his memory and was surprised to find that the solution of the little girl in the horse carriage was very similar to the solution that he had figured out after months of hard thinking. Although the positions of two chess pieces were a little wrong, they were indeed walking on the right path. Unfortunately, this seemingly correct path was still blocked by the road ahead. Thinking that the little girl could do this in such a short time, the yellow-clothed monk could not help but nod slowly. The expression on his face grew warmer, and he thought that she was indeed the Lady of Light of the West Hill Divine Palace. She was indeed extremely intelligent. The Lang Temple did not need the person who was qualified to meet Master Qishan to solve the 3 chess games. That was because the 3 games on the mountain path were extremely difficult. Even the world's top players might not be able to do it, let alone the cultivators who were not good at chess. The 3 games on the mountain path were a test of the wisdom and courage that the cultivator could show in solving the remaining games, as well as other precious qualities. As long as they were outstanding, they could still pass. The yellow-clothed monk knew that the white chess pieces were still on the road to death. However, the courage that the little girl in the horse carriage had shown when solving the game, especially her extraordinary mental arithmetic, was already outstanding enough. She could even be called a genius. Since Sang Sang was a distinguished bigwig in the West Hill Divine Palace, the old monk would naturally not let her continue on the wrong path until it was dark and hopeless. If the Lady of Light lost too badly, it would be too disrespectful to Haotian Taoism. The yellow-clothed old monk stood up and looked at the black horse carriage with a gentle expression. You are indeed the Lady of Light, with unparalleled intelligence. Although this solution still doesn't work, you can pass this one of the 3 rounds on a mountain path. Then he looked at Ning Ke and said, Mr. 13, you were wrong just now. In fact, the rules of the Lang Temple are not necessarily rigid. I think some of them should be respected. Although Ning Ke did not necessarily agree with the old monk, he was satisfied since he had agreed to let him cross the stream and praise Sang Sang. He nodded slightly to the old monk. The chess master from South Jin Kingdom, who had been watching the game by the chessboard, stroked his beard and praised, Master, you are right. Although the little girl's solution has not really understood the mystery of chess, her ability to calculate really makes me feel a little ashamed. The cultivators were very satisfied with the result and nodded repeatedly in praise. It was unknown whether they had really seen the intelligence of the Lady of Light from the situation on the chessboard. Some people were satisfied, and naturally some were not. Aunt Cuny Maddie was very dissatisfied and snorted coldly with some disappointment. There was another person who was not satisfied. Song Song's puzzled voice came from the black horse carriage. I'm going to win. Why did I stop? Chapter 3, for 1,000 words have been delivered. I'm going to sleep. Please vote for me. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to vote for me and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 558. The cultivators watching the game were in an uproar. They were puzzled. By now, they could tell that Bai Qi had no chance of winning based on his current solution. The yellow-garbed old monk's decision to stop the game and let the black horse carriage cross the stream and go up the mountain was a very kind gesture. Why did Sang Sang not seem to accept it? Did the Lady of Light really think that she could solve the game? The yellow-garbed old monk was even more shocked. He looked at the black horse carriage and frowned. He admired Song Song's courage and wisdom, but it did not mean that she could solve the game. However, he did not expect that Sang Sang did not want to accept his kindness. To him, even if she was the noble Lady of Light of the West Hill Divine Palace, it was still an extremely rude move. The old monk was a reclusive elder of the Lang Temple. Since he felt that the other party was rude, he could not help but feel annoyed. He sat down beside the stone chessboard with a cold expression. He picked up a black chess piece from the urn and placed it on the chessboard. The South Jin Kingdom chess master did not expect Sang Sang to reject the suggestion of the Lang Temple to stop the game. He could not help but shake his head and sigh. Do you really think that you can win? Sang Sang lifted a corner of the carriage curtain and looked at the new black chess piece on the chessboard. She found that the black chess piece looked very beautiful under the sunlight from the green trees. She smiled and told him the location. Mo Shanshan picked up a white chess piece and gently placed it on the chessboard, sticking it to the side of the black chess piece. The white chess piece shone brighter and brighter, as if it was about to melt the black chess piece. The yellow-garbed old monk was a little annoyed. However, when he saw the position of the white chess piece, he felt his expression tremble for no reason. He suddenly realized that the white chess piece's movement was completely different from the one he had painstakingly studied in the past. The scattered arrows formed by the white chess pieces on the chessboard seemed to be heading to another world. He did not expect this white chess piece, so he was silent for a while before he made his own move. Just as his old fingers left the surface of the black chess piece, Song Song's soft voice sounded again. It seemed that there was no pause in the middle. Another white chess piece fell on the chessboard. The yellow-garbed old monk's silver-white eyebrows slowly floated in the autumn wind. He looked at the mottled black and white pieces on the chessboard that were entangled and clashing with each other. Suddenly, an extremely strong sense of vigilance rose in him. The chess master from the South Jin Kingdom exclaimed again. He stood by the chessboard and looked at it very carefully. Song Song's voice kept coming from the black carriage. Mo Shanshan kept taking out white chess pieces from the urn and calmly placed them on the stone chessboard. The yellow-clothed old monk's eyebrows rose more and more frequently. On his old face, the expression of caution, deep thought, and surprise kept changing, as if he was seeing something impossible. The frequency of the South Jin Kingdom Go Master's exclamation became more frequent. He leaned lower and lower off the table, and his eyes opened wider and wider, as if he had seen the white chess pieces come to life. Song Song's voice continued to ring out under the green tree. Another 4 or 5 chess pieces were placed on the stone chessboard. The yellow-clothed old monk's expression became unprecedentedly serious. His trembling robes revealed just how nervous he was. A few beads of sweat the size of soybeans appeared on his forehead. There really are piles of Luan Ku. How is this possible? Is there really someone in the world who can calculate it? The yellow-clothed old monk looked at the mess in front of him and mumbled to himself in an extremely dry voice. His body also seemed to become stiff. He reached into the urn and fumbled for a long time before taking out a black chess piece. How is it possible that someone can calculate it? Every step the white chess piece took was like walking on a single-log bridge. A slight miscalculation would result in the tragic end of falling into the abyss. Moreover, every chess piece placed was equivalent to taking an additional step on the bridge, increasing the danger by a fraction and increasing the difficulty of the calculations by a fraction. I have killed countless people on the chessboard in my life, and only then do I understand that man proposes, God disposes. No matter how amazing this little girl's calculation is, can she really go against the natural order? The South Jin Kingdom Go Master stared at the chessboard with his round eyes. He waved his right hand and said in a hoarse voice. No one knew if he was trying to help the yellow-clothed old monk calm down, or if he was trying to release the shock and anxiety in his heart. He took out a few smooth chess pieces from the urn and kept fiddling with them in his slightly trembling right hand, trying to calm himself down. He said in a trembling voice, "Impossible. This is impossible." The Luanka game was unfathomable. It was not until then that the cultivators who were watching realized that the game seemed to have changed a lot. Those who still could not understand vaguely guessed that the white chess pieces had changed a lot when they saw the sweat on the yellow-clothed old monk's forehead and the South Jin Kingdom Go Master's crazy look. Song Song's voice was still ringing. She seemed a little tired, but still childish and accurate. What was more shocking was that there was no pause in the middle, as if she did not need to think at all. The yellow-clothed old monk Ingzi's speed was getting slower and slower. He had to think carefully for a long time before carefully placing a black chess piece. His yellow monk robe was already soaked with sweat. There were more and more chess pieces on the stone chessboard. The black and white colors silently fought and devoured each other in the mountain and autumn light, like night and day blending and separating in the morning and dusk. It was quiet. Only the crisp sound of chess pieces falling on the chessboard, the rustling of the green trees in the autumn wind, and the sound of the autumn water flowing in the deep mountain stream could be heard. As time passed, the morning light had already left the Wa Mountain. The autumn sun was about to rise, and the game was also coming to an end. The yellow-clothed old monk's right hand trembled slightly in the autumn wind. He held a black chess piece between his fingers. He looked at the stone table in front of him and could not place it, because he did not know where to place it. The South Gene Kingdom Go Master's eyes were dry and bloodshot for a long time. He did not know when he had ground the chess piece in his right hand into sharp gravel and cut his palm. Blood dripped down his clenched right hand and fell on a green leaf on the ground, but he did not know it. He suddenly came to his senses and looked up at the black horse carriage that was no longer playing chess. His face was full of awe and fear. He shouted in a trembling voice, "This is God's calculation? This is God's calculation." The yellow-clothed old monk slowly stood up with great difficulty. Then he turned to the black horse carriage and bowed. At this moment, the spectators finally confirmed that Sang Sang had won. They could not help but exclaim. The cultivators who really knew chess looked at the densely packed chess pieces on the chessboard. They were shocked and speechless, but they could not help but praise. They looked at the black horse carriage with awe in their eyes. When they knelt before the black horse carriage, they were also in awe. But at that time, they were in awe of Sang Sang's identity as the Lady of Light and the powerful authority of the West Hill Divine Palace. But now, they were in awe of the Lady of Light's pure wisdom in solving the game. Since they were cultivators, they certainly knew what this pure wisdom meant. In the past 2 years, the cultivation world had vaguely known that the successor of the former Divine Priest of Light was in Chang'an. But because the West Hill Divine Palace had intentionally or unintentionally covered it up, they did not know what kind of person the Lady of Light was. Later, they learned that the Lady of Light was the daughter of a minister of the Tang Empire and the handmaiden of Mr. 13 of the Academy. They could not help but wonder what kind of potential or ability she had to be valued by the West Hill Divine Palace and chosen as the successor of the former Great Divine Priest of Light. Until today, they finally understood that everything made sense. Sang Sang had really solved the game. Even Ning Ke could not believe it for a while. Of course, he was very happy, especially when he recalled the silent tile mountain, with only Sang Sang's clear voice echoing around the stone table. He actually felt the happiness and sadness of having a daughter growing up in his family. Just as the yellow-clothed old monk bowed and admitted defeat, he suddenly noticed that the high monk of the Xiankong temple under the Buddhist sedan under the bridge leaned forward slightly, as if he was paying attention to Sang Sang. He could not help but be alarmed. He withdrew his gaze from the Buddhist sedan and asked, "Can we go up the mountain?" Monk Guanhai had been standing by and witnessed the whole process of Sang Sang solving the game. He sincerely praised, "She is indeed the legendary Lady of Light. Man's plan is better than God's. Senior brother, please." Seeing Sang Sang's glory, the big black horse proudly thought that although his mistress looked ordinary, she was not bad at all. He could not help but snort happily. The horses that were grazing by the stream heard his snort and subconsciously became afraid. They ran up the grassy slope in disorder. The black horse carriage slowly drove up the stone bridge and crossed the jumping tiger stream. Looking at the black horse carriage gradually disappearing into the depths of the tile mountain, the cultivators were in awe. The chess master from South Gene Kingdom seemed to have thought of something. He ran up the stone bridge and chased after the black horse carriage. He did not solve the game, but crossed the stone bridge. The yellow-clothed old monk should have stopped the crazy chess master from South Gene Kingdom, but he seemed to have forgotten about it. He just looked at the game on the stone table in silence. He had been watching this game for decades and was confident that he had understood all the changes in the game. However, at this moment, he suddenly realized that he could not understand the game. If it was someone else who presided over the game today, the black chess would have been defeated by Sang Sang's awesome God's calculation. However, because he understood the game better than anyone else in the world, he struggled to hold on for a long time before Sang Sang's God's calculation. His mind was severely damaged. The autumn wind blew. The yellow-clothed old monk's body suddenly shook, and a stream of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. The chaotic coup game emphasizes on being unconventional, winding paths leading to seclusion. However, How could the predecessors who laid down this game have imagined that there was someone who was able to turn a secluded winding path into a broad and open road just by calculating? He wiped off the blood with his monk sleeve and looked at the black and white chess pieces on the chessboard. He said in a slightly bitter voice, "Since there are people in the world who can predict the future, this chess game is meaningless. Let it stay here." As soon as he finished speaking, the yellow-clothed old monk waved his sleeve and brushed off a leaf on the chessboard. Chung Ziqing frowned and asked, "Master, if we keep this game, what should we do next? If the game is not finished, how can we talk about passing? Those who want to cross the stream, please help yourself." The yellow-clothed old monk said, and then floated away. Hearing that they could pass this stage without solving the Luan Ku game, the cultivators under the big green tree were overjoyed. They all walked to the stone bridge. The famous Song Kingdom Taoist, who loved chess, lagged behind. He walked to the stone table and looked at the game. He subconsciously reached out to pick up a white chess piece, but he found that he could not pick it up. He could not help but be shocked. It turned out that before the yellow-clothed old monk left, he had used some unknown method to press all the black and white chess pieces into the stone chessboard. From that day on, the Luanka game would forever stay under the green tree beside the jumping tiger stream on Wa Mountain. It would not be messed up again after experiencing wind, frost, rain, and snow. And the legendary 3 games on Wa Mountain would forever be 1 game short. This is the first chapter. I'm really writing it. I've spent half a day on this chapter. If you still have monthly votes, please vote them. I really can't take it anymore. When the next chapter will be, I'm not sure, but there will definitely be one. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 559. A black horse carriage was moving slowly in the depths of the Wa Mountain. The bluestone road was very smooth, but the mud between the bluestone roads had been washed away by the wind and rain for many years, gradually forming stone cracks about a few fingers wide. Although the carriage was as light as a feather, the steel wheels rolled over these stone cracks, so it was inevitable that it would be a little bumpy. Naturally, it was difficult for the people in the carriage to sleep. Sang Sang reclined on the quilt beside the window, her eyelashes gently covering her face. She was obviously weak from illness, but her pale cheeks were flushed and there was a small bead of sweat on the tip of her nose. It seemed that she was still a little excited. Mo Shan Shan sat on the soft cushion opposite her and looked at her quietly. Her sparse and long eyelashes fluttered slightly, and her eyes were bright. She seemed to be a little curious and a little impressed. Sang Sang was a little nervous under her gaze and said softly, "Can you not look at me like that?" Mo Shan Shan came back to herself and said calmly, "When the chess game ended, there were many people beside the jumping tiger stream who wanted to see you. Their gazes were much more passionate than mine. It's just that the walls of this carriage are too thick, or else those gazes would have burned whole. And you have to get used to this kind of gaze in the future." Sang Sang opened her eyes and looked at her curiously. "Just now, there were really many people looking at me like that." Mo Shan Shan nodded. "It's rare for someone to look at me like that." "Yes, it's never happened before," Sang Sang said in a low voice. Then she seemed to think of something and looked out of the window. The autumn wind blew the green curtains, bringing the scenery of the Wa Mountain into the carriage, making it a little clear and helpless. "I've never been good-looking since I was a child. Ning Ke said that for the first 2 years after I was picked up, I couldn't grow up no matter if I drank meat soup or rice soup. I was like a little mouse in his arms." She looked at the mountain scenery outside the window and said in a daze, "Although I was raised by him, I still couldn't be raised to look good. I was thin, small, and dark. Even my hair wasn't good. It was soft and yellow. I looked like a cabbage that hadn't been picked in time. Even if I wore new clothes for the new year, I still looked listless. Ning Ke once laughed at me. He said that no matter if I was thrown into a vegetable field or a coal mine, no one would find me. He was right. I have always been the most inconspicuous handmaiden." Sang Sang said, "When I was a child, I dragged 17 kilograms of lamb leg home from the butcher shop in the city of Wei. No one thought helping me. It's not that the people in the city of Wei are not enthusiastic, but they really don't see me. It's the same in Chang'an. I lived in the old brush pen shop for 2 years, and I almost went to buy it every morning. But sometimes the uncle selling hot and sour noodle slice soup at the entrance of Lynn 47th Street would forget who I am. She turned around and smiled at Mo Shan Shan. Her smile was genuine, and her two white front teeth seemed to light up the dark carriage. She said, Ning K is better looking than me, and his mouth is sweeter than mine. That's why it's easy for people to like him, be it General Ma of the city of Wei, Aunt Jian, or the headmaster of the academy. Then she continued, when I am with him, people only look at him, but it's actually good. I'm used to standing behind him. Anyway, I don't like to be stared at. And Mo Shan Shan looked at the girl who was calmly talking about the past and found that she couldn't calm down. She didn't know what to say, so she kept silent. She remembered that when she left Chong, and she was sitting in the horse carriage at the entrance of Lin 47th Street, and looked at the old brush pen shop from afar. At that time, Ning K and Sang Sang ate at the same table and seldom talked to each other. However, there was a natural harmony between the master and the servant in their gestures and even in their eyes. Mo Shan Shan thought with mixed feelings. Even if you're the most inconspicuous handmaiden in the world, even if no one notices you, but you and Ning K only have eyes for each other, then at least he will always be looking at you. At least in Ning K's eyes, Sang Sang, you are beautiful. She said, I know what you mean, but I really hope that I can be really beautiful. So after I arrived in Chang'an, I started to buy cosmetics in Shinjinji Cosmetics Store, even though I didn't make much money. Sang Sang smiled embarrassedly and turned to look out of the window. At this time, there were countless colors on Tile Mountain. Because of the warm and humid sea breeze, the trees were still green and lush even though it was late autumn. The higher they went, the lower the temperature became. The color of the leaves also changed accordingly. Yellow was like tender chrysanthemum, and red was like rouge. Layer by layer, it was beautiful. When I was a child in Min Mountain, I liked to look at trees in autumn, just like the trees outside the window. I think they are beautiful, but Ning K doesn't like them. He always said that when the leaves turn yellow, the beasts in the mountain will either hibernate or die, and hunting will become more and more difficult. He also said that no matter how beautiful the yellow and red leaves are, they can only be beautiful for a short time, and then they will be blown off and become useless mud. After saying this, Sang Sang looked at the mountain scenery outside the window and was silent for a long time, until her face was a little cold from the mountain breeze. She frowned and became determined. Then she said, You like young master, don't you? She had been talking about Ning K, but now she was talking about young master. Mo Shan Shan was sure that she did not hear it wrong. She looked at her blankly and did not know what to say. She knew that Ning K and Sang Sang were engaged. When she heard Song Song's sudden question, she could not help but feel confused. She subconsciously looked down at the tips of her shoes that were not covered by her white cotton dress. The shoes were ordinary shoes. No matter how long she looked at them, she could not see anything. Her hair trembled slightly in front of her eyes. Her eyes were a little unfocused, and her thin red lips became tighter and tighter. She was inexplicably nervous. However, she was a quiet and sincere calligraphy addict. She especially did not want to hide anything from Sang Sang, and it was meaningless to hide anything. So she gently nodded. Sang Sang heard a sound behind her, but she did not turn back. She only smiled at Xiao Shan, revealing two white front teeth. In the past years, Sang Sang felt that she was not good-looking. Although her teeth were neat, her two front teeth were a little conspicuous. So she did not want to laugh heartily like other girls in the Tang Empire. Even if she laughed, she would usually lower her head and smile shyly. Or she would smile innocently like when she cheated Chin Pippi of money, or she would smile foolishly after her little feet were warmed by Ning Quebec. But recently, she did not know why she often smiled. Her two white front teeth made her look as cute as a little rabbit. She looked at the tree full of red leaves by the road. It was like a burning tree. She said, but not now. Mo Shan Shan quietly looked at her thin back. After a moment, she smiled and said, The black horse carriage drove on the mountain road of Wa Mountain. A red leaf fell from the branches and landed on the roof of the carriage. Then it was shaken to the grass by the road. It was not crushed into mud, but it would eventually become mud. The autumn wind blew, and Song Song's smile gradually disappeared. Thinking of the red leaf, she said seriously, "Wait until after I die." To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 560. During the conversation in the carriage, Emo Shan Shan had been softly humming. Hearing Song Song's last sentence, she hummed again without thinking. Then she realized something was wrong. So she hummed again. She raised her voice slightly at the end to express doubt and shock, as well as some complex emotions that could not be accurately conveyed by the tone alone. If this conversation had taken place between other women in the world, they would probably have thought that it was full of tension and sarcasm. However, Emo Shan Shan knew Sang Sang very well, so she understood that Sang Sang did not have any intention of showing off, but was seriously telling the truth. She knew from Ning Kei that Sang Sang was seriously ill and came to the Lang Temple for treatment. Although Master Qishan might have a way, even the headmaster of the academy could not cure Sang Sang. Even if there was hope, it was very unlikely. Thinking of Song Song's last two sentences, she felt a little sad. It was almost noon. The black horse carriage stopped beside a Zen temple on the mountainside to rest for a while. Monk Guan Hai caught up from behind and arranged for the monks to prepare lunch. He led Ning Kei and the others into a quiet courtyard. Sang Sang had spent some energy on the chess game and was still weak. After eating a few mouthfuls of vegetables, she felt a little tired. Ning Kei carried her into the inner room and spread out the clean bedding on the bed to cover her. Then he carefully tucked in the corner of the quilt, making sure that no autumn wind could sneak in before he was relieved. "I told you to ignore the chess game, but you didn't listen." Ning Kei looked at her haggard face and said uneasily. Sang Sang whispered, "But I really feel that chess is interesting. I heard that after I won, many people admired me. Aren't you happy?" Ning Kei thought about it and said, "I am indeed very happy and proud." Sang Sang smiled contentedly. Ning Kei reached out to cover her eyes and let her sleep. Sang Sang refused to close her eyes. Her eyelashes fluttered, making Ning Kei's palms a little itchy. "Ning Quebec," Song Song's voice came through his fingers. Ning Kei looked slightly surprised and said, "Yes." Sang Sang said, "You are mine." Ning Kei laughed and said, "I am yours. What is yours is yours. What is yours is all yours." Sang Sang said after a moment of silence, "I am not a good person, am I? If the Lady of Light is not a good person, then who is? Am I really the Lady of Light? I killed someone at such a young age. When did you kill someone? Didn't I kill Grandpa? You only poured a bucket of boiling water. I was the one who cut it. Then I'm also your accomplice. What's going on in that head of yours?" Ning Kei was a little annoyed and said, "Since young, I've tried my best not to let you stain your hands with blood. But now, you want to prove that you have stained your hand with blood. Are you very proud?" Sang Sang turned her back to him and said, "I'm not proud. I just feel that I'm not the kind of good person many people think I am." On the way up the mountain, Sang Sang, Shan Shan, and the horse carriage spoke softly, but Ning Kei heard everything. He could guess what Sang Sang wanted to say, but he did not want to hear it. However, as before, Sang Sang would definitely do what he did not want to do as long as she wanted to do it. Just like now, he did not want to hear it, but Sang Sang still talked to herself. "I used up all the money I had to buy the house by Yiming Lake, and I still owe Mr. Chi more than 700 taels of silver. If I can get some dividends from a gambling house after winter, then I can pay it off in advance next year. But I always feel that it is not good to owe people money, so I'm thinking whether I can rent out the old brushpin shop. Those sent by the Emperor and the Empress are all collected into a book, which I put at the bottom of the winter clothes box in the West Wing room. Her Highness sent 160 big trees. I have inquired about it. There are many rich people in West Mountain, and they like these trees very much. If you want to sell them, they will be sold for more than 500 taels of silver. Annie Wu borrowed 14 taels of silver last time and hasn't paid it back. I also know that Boss Wu borrowed money from you last time, but you just know how much it is. Besides oil, salt, soy sauce, and vinegar, I don't want you to say that I'm stingy again. But remember, I hid a gold brick in the brick wall behind the pile of firewood in the courtyard of the old brush pen shop. Sang Sang looked at the wall and did not dare to turn around. She said shyly, "When I was a child, I was worried that you would not marry me when you grew up, and that your new sister-in-law would not let me stay at home. So I've been secretly saving money, thinking that if I really got married, I would not need to worry about having some dowry. I have been saving money since I arrived in Chang'an." Ning Ke was stunned when he heard this. He thought that both of them had lived carefully enough in their lives, but she could still save money. He could not help but admire her, and said with a smile, "I think His Majesty should really invite you to be the Minister of Revenue." Sang Sang ignored his joke and said seriously, "I have saved more than 2,100 taels of silver, which are all with Annie Jane. I know you have never liked to sell calligraphy. When you entered Chang'an, I forced you to. If you really need money in the future, you can use my money." These words sounded like the last words of the mistress of the family. Ning Ke was angry and amused, but he really did not care about auspiciousness. He asked, "What about the gold brick?" Sang Sang turned around and looked at him seriously. "I left that gold brick for my parents." Ning Ke recalled what she told him and asked, "You left nothing for me except the silver. The shoes and socks have been made for many years. Anyway, I am not good at needlework, so you can wear them." Sang Sang suddenly remembered something and whispered, "There's a small black box under the bed in the old brush pen shop. Don't forget it." Ning Ke did not know that Sang Sang had a small black box until last year. In the small black box, there were some things that he had decided to throw away for some reason, but they were actually very precious to him, such as the funeral invitation that he had made on the rainy night after Darky's death. He nodded and said, "I know." Sang Sang shook her head and said, "You don't know. You threw away the letters that the calligraphy addict sent you after reading them, and then I kept them all. Now there are more than a dozen of them." After a moment of silence, Ning Ke said, "Reading the letters once is enough. Who would take them out all the time?" Sang Sang suddenly smiled and said, "I originally thought that when we are old and lying on the bamboo chairs in the old brush pen shop waiting for death, I would take out the small black box and let you read those letters again. I thought that would make you very happy. Unfortunately, it seems that I can't grow old with you. I don't know where you learned these sour words." Ning Ke put his hand into the quilt and held her slightly cold hand. He said with a smile, "That is the fantasy of the stupid literati. You are still so young, so you shouldn't be so sour and smelly. I haven't taken a bath for a few days. Isn't it sour and smelly?" Sang Sang said, "Young master, I may really die. I can't wait until I'm old to tell you these, so I am in a hurry to tell you now. Don't think I'm annoying." Ning Ke smiled and asked, "Not at all. I just want to know if you have finished saying your last words." Sang Sang happily replied, "Almost done." Ning Ke said, "You still have the energy to play chess and talk nonsense. You don't look like you're going to die. Besides, you can see Master Qishan today. The headmaster said that he can cure you, so he must be able to cure you. What last words?" Sang Sang opened her eyes wide and insisted, "But what if I can't say it in time?" Ning Ke said, Okay. If you want to say it every year." Sang Sang was amused by him and then began to cough. Her thin body trembled slightly and her brows were tightly knitted. Her face was pale and she seemed to be in great pain. Ning Ke flicked his left index finger and a thin piece of fu paper floated into the air of the meditation room. It began to burn silently and turned into a warm fireball. It floated in the air like a small sun. Then he held Sang Sang in his arms and gently patted her on the back. Sang Sang coughed painfully and only felt better after a while. She closed her eyes and said in a weak voice, "I'm not a good person and I'm not good looking. I could do nothing but housework, but I married you. Many people will think that you have suffered a loss." Ning Ke said, "It sounds like I have indeed suffered a loss." Sang Sang smiled and said, "It's not a big deal. Who asked you to pick me up back then?" Ning Ke also smiled and said, "It's all my fault that my ears were too sharp." Sang Sang slowly opened her eyes and looked at him seriously. She said, "Ning Ke, the first person I saw when I opened my eyes was you. So when I close my eyes, I want to see you die." Ning Ke confirmed, "Do you want to see me and then die? Or do you want to see me die?" The first part is quite sad, but the second part is too cruel. "Do you really want me to die before you?" Sang Sang laughed and said, "You know what I'm talking about. When I die, you can marry her or anyone else. It's up to you." Ning Ke shook his head and said, "If you die, I really don't want to live anymore." Sang Sang said, "You said that I was jealous. Look at you. This is what a woman should say." Ning Ke said, "I am a woman." Sang Sang smiled and said, "Then I will be a man." Sang Sang fell asleep. Ning Ke walked out of the meditation room and stood in the courtyard, facing the autumn tree outside the wall. He was in a daze for a long time. He thought of many things, the things in the past and the things in the present. Then he thought of the chess game. Many years ago, he knew that Sang Sang had an unimaginable calculating ability. It was not an exaggeration to say that she was a genius. Sang Sang's ability had helped him a lot since he was a child when he was hunting in the Min Mountain and chopping firewood in the city of Wei. However, except for this kind of life and death battle, he seemed to selectively forget all the talents of Sang Sang, because he was used to standing in front of Sang Sang and shielding her from the wind and rain. But this time, would he still be able to shield her from the storm and the dark? The title is like what Su San said. Writing this kind of plot is really asking for trouble. Just like the second chapter yesterday, it is really exhausting. But I like to ask for trouble like this. Self-abuse is also a kind of pleasure. Today, the second chapter will be out before 10:30, and there are 4 chapters in total today. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 561. After more than a decade of ups and downs, Ning Ke had never hesitated because it had become a habit. Once it became a habit, it would become the most powerful force. However, he did not expect that some habits would be broken on this trip to the Lang Temple and Tile Mountain. Beside the jumping tiger stream, Sang Sang said that she would try to solve the game by herself, which surprised him, because he knew that although she was a little vain sometimes, she was never competitive. More importantly, according to past habits, in this kind of situation, she should quietly stand by his side, waiting for him to solve the problem. He thought of many reasons, such as the other girl in the carriage. However, after listening to Sang Sang's words in the meditation room, he realized that Sang Sang was just trying to prove herself. To prove herself was to prove to herself that it had nothing to do with the world. Sang Sang just wanted to prove to herself that she was no longer a silent handmaiden by Ning Ke's side, but a wife who could share his burden. She even wanted to try to shelter him from the wind and the rain, because she also had needs, the need to be needed by Ning Ke and the need to make Ning Ke proud. Ning Ke looked at the autumn tree and frowned slightly. Then he reached out and gently flicked the red leaves in the meditation room and said, "What an idiot. I raised you. Do I need you to think for me and protect me?" During the conversation in the meditation room, he felt like crying several times. However, he managed to cover it up with his cold temperament and talent for acting. Now that he was the only one in the courtyard, he could not help but wipe his eyes. He felt very embarrassed. Looking at the red leaves on the branches of the autumn tree that were about to fall, he scolded angrily. "Just because of this, even if you die, I will go to the underworld to catch you and teach you a lesson." Light footsteps sounded. Shan Shan, who was wearing a white cotton dress, walked over and stood beside him without looking at his face. The meditation room was quiet, except for Sang Sang's uncomfortable coughing in her sleep. The two looked at the red leaves in silence. Ning Ke suddenly said, "Ah." And Mo Shan Shan said, "Yes, yes, ah." There was still a sound in the silence. At this moment, there was a commotion outside the temple. It seemed that someone wanted to enter the courtyard, but was stopped by the monks in the temple. An intense argument broke out between the two parties, instantly breaking the silence in the courtyard. Ning Ke could tell that it was the voice of the South Jin Kingdom's imperial chess master. He could not help but frown and look at the courtyard door. "Why do you want to see her?" "Of course, I want her to acknowledge me as her master. You are also monks of the Lang Temple. Don't you know what the divination of heaven means? There hasn't been a heavenly diviner in tens of thousands of years. How can he cultivate? Of course, I want to play chess." Although that little girl is a heaven-defying person, the way of chess is as vast as the ocean. How could it be so simple? If she is willing to become my disciple and learn chess, I will definitely teach her everything I know in my life. That little girl has such talent. Today, she has met a brilliant teacher like me. As long as she focuses on chess, she will become the overlord of the chess world in 10 years. She will be stronger than Master Dongming of the Lang Temple. She may even surpass the greatest Master Song Qian in the history of the South Jin Kingdom and become the legendary chess sage. If she could become the chess saint, why would she be the Lady of Light? Get out of the way. What she runs away. The South Jin Kingdom chess master's angry roars kept ringing outside the temple. It was obvious that no matter how much he scolded or stomped his feet, the monks of the Lang Temple would not allow him to disturb Ning Ke and the others. Ning Ke thought that this fellow was really crazy about chess. He actually had the temperament of his fellow disciples in the back of the mountain of the academy. He was a little angry that Sang Sang might have been woken up, but now he could not get angry. And Mo Shanshan suddenly said, "Actually, I am very jealous of her, and also of you." Ning Ke was stunned. "I know that you and Sang Sang have had a hard time in the past. I am very jealous of the hardships you have suffered together." And Mo Shanshan smiled and said, "I will quiet that person. Don't worry." No one knew what Mo Shanshan said, but the South Jin Kingdom chess master actually did not insist on seeing Sang Sang. The temple was quiet again. However, she did not come back to see the red leaves with Ning Quebec Ning. Kane knew what this meant. He felt a slight loss and then calmed down. He quietly looked at the branch that extended into the temple and the red leaves on it. He paid attention to Song Song's movements in the temple. There was a fan-shaped stone window on the white wall of the temple. It was used for ventilation, and the view of the mountains outside the temple could be seen. A young girl's face appeared in the fan-shaped stone window. That face was cold and emotionless. However, because it was too beautiful, it was as charming as a flower that had been washed by dew. As such, it was an extremely beautiful scene in the stone window. Because she was the princess of the Yueluan kingdom, the flower addict, Lu Qinjia. Ning Ke looked at Lu Qinjia and raised his eyebrows slightly. He did not say anything. Lu Qinjia looked at Ning Ke through the window. Her fingers gently played with an inconspicuous yellow flower. She said indifferently, "I did not expect your handmaiden to become the successor of the divine priest of light." Ning Ke said, "I am engaged to her." Lu Qinjia's voice was cold and emotionless. She said, "How old is your wife?" Ning Ke said, 16. Lu Qinjia shook her head and said, "She doesn't look more than 13 or 14. Ning Ke said, "She had a very serious typhoid when she was young. She was not well nourished, so the root of the illness has not been cured. She looks a little thin and weak. She will be fine after 2 more years." He had only met the flower addict a few times and were not familiar with her. They had even had an intense conflict in the wilderness, especially because of Prince Long Qing. It was impossible for them to become friends. He could have ignored her, but for some reason, he seriously explained Song Song's illness. Lu Qinjia asked softly, "Is her illness acting up again?" Ning Ke did not hide it and said, "Yes." Lu Qinjia looked into his eyes and asked, "You came to the Lang Temple to ask Master Qishan to treat her illness?" Ning Ke said, "That's right." Lu Qinjia's expression finally changed. She asked in confusion, "Even the headmaster can't cure her?" Ning Ke said, "Yes." Lu Qinjia gently rubbed the thin stem of the yellow flower and said softly, "And is having an afternoon nap. I was bored, so I walked around and said a few words to you when I saw you. I did not expect you to be willing to answer me." Ning Ke looked at her and said, "They say that you are crazy about flowers. Coincidentally, there is a senior brother in the academy who also loves flowers. He is skilled in medicine, so I want to see if you have any solution for Song Song's illness." The medicine that Sang Sang had been taking along the way had all been prescribed by 11th brother. Wang Qi. Ning Ke thought that since senior brother was skilled in herbs, then the flower addict might also be skilled in medicine. Although this deduction did not seem to make much sense, he could not care so much about it. Lu Qinjia smiled faintly and said, "There is no friendship between us. We even have some grudges. Under such circumstances, you are actually willing to beg me. It seems that she is very important to you. Ning Ke said, everyone has someone important to them. Yes, for example, Long Qing to me. Lu Qinjiao looked into Ning Ke's eyes, and the smile on her face faded. She said indifferently, even the headmaster of the academy cannot cure her. Do you really think that Master Qishan can? The thought of you watching the most important person in your life die before your eyes is the best thing that can happen to me. Ning Ke was not angered by her words. He looked at her calmly and said, because of what you said, if Song Song's illness cannot be cured, I will kill Kuni Mati, your father, the emperor of Yuelin Kingdom, and everyone else in the world who means anything to you. Then, I will kill you and bury you with Sang Sang. Lu Qinjiao's expression was cold, but she did not show any fear. She said indifferently, then you must first leave Tile Mountain alive. Ning Ke said, there is no place in the world that can keep me. Lu Qinjiao's expression changed slightly. She looked at him and asked, are you really not afraid? Ning Ke said, what do I need to be afraid of? Lu Qinjia said, you killed Master Dao Shi. Aren't you afraid that the high monks of Xiankong Temple will imprison you for 1,000 years? Ning Ke said, if Xiankong Temple had the guts, the academy would have ceased to exist long ago. Lu Qinjia suddenly smiled and said, but if the rumors are true and you are the son of Yama, then I believe that both the Buddhism sect and Haotian Taoism will kill you at all costs. So this is what you want to scare me about. Unfortunately, I am not. You all have no evidence to prove that I am. Ning Ke looked at her and said, and I want to tell you something. Prince Long Qing lost to me in front of Red Lotus Temple a few days ago. He said that he is the son of Yama. After saying this, he turned around and walked into the monastery. Hearing Long Qing's name, Lu Qinjia's expression became a little strange. She looked at Ning Ke's receding figure without any emotion in her eyes. However, she used some strength in her fingers and broke the flower stem. The pitiful yellow flower fell at her feet. Ning Ke helped Sang Sang up from the bed and fed her the medicine. Then, he used the Great Spirit to sense the condition of her body. He confirmed that the poison she had been poisoned in front of Red Lotus Temple was basically gone. The cold aura seemed to have been temporarily suppressed by Yi Hongyu's divine light and was in a dormant state. It should not act up in a short period of time. He knew that this was not a good thing. The longer the cold aura stayed dormant, the more terrifying it would be when it acted up. If he tried to suppress it forcefully, it would become more and more difficult. He had already used Yi Hongyu, who was now the great divine priest of judgment. Would he have to go to Jishou Abbey next time? Therefore, he could only pin all his hopes on the Lang Temple, on Master Qishan, who was said to be like Buddha and would grant all his requests. At this moment, thinking of how he had been so tough on the monks of the Lang Temple because of his anxiety at the jumping tiger stream, he could not help but feel a little scared. How could he have shouted at a doctor before treating a patient? What is this? Sang Sang looked at the small brocade pouch in her hand and asked in confusion. Ning Ke said, Master left me something. I used one at the front gate of the Devil's Doctrine. There is still one left. Take it with you. If anything happens later, tell me in your heart. The third chapter will be written later. I will try to finish it before 1 o'clock. To be continued. If you like this work, please come Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 562. They walked out of the temple and got on the black horse carriage. After a while, they saw an old pavilion in the forest. This pavilion was not desolate and lonely in the autumn wind because it was too tall. It was as tall as an ordinary 3-story building, with huge beams and flying eaves. It stood still amidst the red and yellow leaves, looking quite imposing. The second game of the 3 games of chess on Wan Mountain would be played in this pavilion. Monk Guanhai led the crowd to the pavilion and stopped. Because the chaotic game at Jumping Tiger Stream had been canceled, there were still many cultivators present, but no one dared to speak loudly. The Buddhist sedan stopped about 100 feet away from the pavilion. The president of the commandment yard of the Xiankong Temple was still silent, but many people were secretly looking at him. Ning Ke had said that if he and Sang Sang could not play, then no one else could. The high monk of the Xiankong temple seemed to follow his words. Maybe because of this, Mati, who was under the Buddhist sedan, looked at the black horse carriage with more hatred, while the flower addict, Lu Qinjia, looked indifferent. There was an old monk in the pavilion. He must be the host of the second game. This old monk was wearing a monk robe made of plain cloth. His face was full of deep wrinkles that hung down like autumn branches with fruits hanging on them. He seemed to be much older than the yellow-clothed old monk by the jumping tiger stream. The old monk in the pavilion first bowed to the Buddhist sedan in the distance. The figure of the high monk in the Buddhist sedan leaned forward, as if he was solemnly returning the bow. The old monk looked at the black horse carriage and said, "The Lady of Light and Mr. 13 of the Academy have come to Wa Mountain. It is an honor for me." Ninkei did not know the old monk's identity and generation. He thought of his previous self-reflection and returned the bow. The old monk continued, "Aunt Chu of Yulin Kingdom, Mr. Chung of Sword Garret, the calligraphy addict, and the flower addict are all here. Also, the Crown Prince of South Jin Kingdom is here. Wa Mountain has not seen such a grand scene for many years. It is very impressive." The old monk sounded emotional, but in fact his voice was indifferent and mechanical. He introduced the bigwigs who had come to Wa Mountain as if he was taking names. He did not feel emotional at all. He was probably just being polite when he said it was an honor. After the formalities, they got to the main topic. The old monk did not say much and sat quietly in a corner of the pavilion. There was a huge wooden chessboard in front of him. A wooden fork was placed on the opposite side of the chessboard, and a curtain hung from the pavilion to the ground. The second game of the 3 games of chess on Wa Mountain was always a duel. Judging from the shape of the fork, it should be used to place the pieces on the chessboard. The curtain looked extremely thick, but what was it for? The old monk was already prepared for a game of chess. He used his actions to send out an invitation. The people outside the pavilion were still very quiet. No one walked into the pavilion. Everyone wanted to pass the test and reach the top of Wa Mountain. The last game of chess on the top of the mountain was likely to be hosted by Master Qishan himself. Even if he couldn't become the fated person chosen by the master, it would still be a great fortune to be able to play a game with the master. The reason why no one walked into the pavilion wasn't because they didn't want to try, but because the person in the black carriage hadn't spoken yet. Even if they wanted to play chess with the old monk, they couldn't beat him to it. The black carriage moved slowly again until it stopped in front of the stone steps of the pavilion. The old monk looked at the black carriage, and suddenly a strange light flashed in his eyes. His voice was still as calm as water. He said slowly, "I heard that the Lady of Light defeated my untalented younger brother with her heaven's divination at the jumping tiger stream. I think she must be very good at chess." Hearing this, Ninkei thought that the Lang Temple was indeed very popular in chess. Even the reclusive elder who had cultivated to a state of mind like still water refused to admit defeat in this aspect. It would be a tough battle later on. Ninkei couldn't help but feel slightly worried. However, to his surprise, the old monk in the pavilion said slowly after a slight pause, "If you can see through the heaven's divination, why do you need to calculate the mysteries of chess? Mr. 13, you can take the Lady of Light up the mountain by yourself." Ninkei was slightly startled. He turned back and said something to the carriage. He didn't know what Sang Sang said in the carriage, but he shook his head and turned back. He said, "I came to Wa Mountain to seek medical advice, so I naturally have to follow the rules of the mountain. I still have to play this game." Hearing this, the cultivators around the pavilion were shocked. They thought that he had tried to force his way up the mountain by the jumping tiger stream. He didn't care about the rules at all, but now he wanted to follow the rules? Monk Guanhai was also puzzled and looked at Ning Quebec. The abbot of the Lang Temple was even more dissatisfied. He thought to himself that Ning Ke had changed from being arrogant to being respectful. Where did he think the quiet place of the Buddhism sect was? Ning Ke naturally knew their reactions, but he couldn't do anything about it. Sang Sang had said that she wanted to play this game, and she even wanted to play a third game with Master Qishan when they reached the top of the mountain. If it had been in the past, Ning Ke would definitely not have cared about her thoughts and directly let the black carriage leave the pavilion and go straight to the top of the mountain. However, it was different now. He clearly knew the little girl's intentions. Since she could still hold on, then he would play. As long as she was happy, it didn't matter whether he won or lost the game. The mountain was getting higher, and the autumn wind was getting colder. He took out his academy winter robe from the carriage and covered Sang Sang with it. He carried her into the pavilion and looked at the old monk. He said, "She is a little weak. Please don't be offended, master." The old monk said, "A patient should be treated. Why do you have to play this game?" Ning Ke said, "A patient always has the right to eat 2 more pieces of candy. I can't do anything about it." The old monk laughed. The wrinkles on his face were like the branches of a forest being blown by the wind. He said, "I have cultivated in peace and in action all my life, but I can't completely get rid of the desire to win or lose. In fact, I also want to play this game." Ning Ke couldn't help but laugh when he heard this. He thought that this old monk was much more interesting than the previous one. The old monk looked at Sang Sang, whose head and face were covered by the black robe. He pointed to the thick curtain opposite the chessboard and said, "Since you are a patient, you can't stand the wind. Just sit inside." Hearing this, Ning Ke took Sang Sang to the curtains and found that they were made of thick cotton. They hung from the pavilion to the ground and covered the surroundings so that no wind could escape. There was a very thick straw mat on the ground and a cotton blanket. There was a gap in front of the curtains so that they could have a panoramic view of the big chessboard in the pavilion. He didn't expect the Lang Temple to be so well prepared. Ning Ke was very satisfied that he no longer had to worry about Sang Sang being blown by the wind. However, he suddenly thought of something and his heart suddenly tightened. The weakest part of a cultivator was their body. Faced with hundreds of arrows from ordinary people, even a powerhouse in the see-through state would be shot to death. However, cultivators could sense the chi of heaven and earth. So, compared to ordinary people, it was extremely difficult for them to fall sick. For example, the cultivators outside the pavilion were not afraid of the wind. So, who was the curtain in the pavilion prepared for? Of course it was Sang Sang. Ning Ke finally understood that the Lang Temple had been prepared for what would happen today. They had even confirmed that Sang Sang would be the one to break the game and not him. If the former was because the Academy had sent a letter to Master Qishan's cottage, then how could the latter be explained? Could it be that Master Qishan really had the ability to predict the future? Just as he was thinking about this with a frown, the voice of the South Jin Kingdom chess master came from outside the curtain. "My eyesight is not good. Can I look closer? I can also be a judge for you." The old monk looked at the uninvited person from the South Jin Kingdom and asked indifferently, "Do you know chess?" The South Jin Kingdom chess master smiled and said, "A little." The old monk seemed to be satisfied with his answer and asked, "Which Taoist temple do you study from?" The South Jin Kingdom chess master's expression changed slightly, and he replied, "My master is Su Su." The old monk said, "So it's Su Su. How is your chess skill compared to his?" The South Jin Kingdom chess master replied, "My master is old. I can barely beat him." The old monk nodded and said, "Then you do know a little about chess." The South Jin Kingdom chess master was extremely proud of his chess skills. He was just being reserved when he said that he knew a little. He did not expect the old monk to really think so. He could not help but feel annoyed. He had only admired 3 people in chess in his life. One was a palace chess master of the Ulan Kingdom who had suddenly disappeared. The other was Master Dongming of the Lang Temple, who was rumored to have passed away, and the one he admired and respected the most was his predecessor in the South Jin Kingdom, Master Song Qian, who had become a legend. Other than these 3 people, he did not care about the rest of the chess players. Even though he found out that Sang Sang had the ability to predict the future, he still wanted to take her as a student. The chess master of the South Jin Kingdom was angry and wanted to argue with the old monk. However, when he saw the old monk's face, he felt a chill in his heart and forgot to argue with the old monk. He was sure that he had never seen this old monk before, but he felt that the old monk's face was very familiar, as if he had seen him countless times. The South Jin Kingdom chess master thought hard but could not remember. At this moment, the second game of the 3 games on the Wam Mountain officially began. The old monk looked at the curtain and asked calmly, "Lady of Light, what color do you want?" Song Song's voice came from the curtain. She did not seem to have any hesitation, as if she did not need to think. Black. Hearing Song Song's answer, the old monk's body trembled slightly. His old face showed a very complicated expression. He looked at the thick curtain and sighed with unspeakable regret. Sang Sang also heard the sigh from the curtain. She walked into the autumn pavilion and saw the old monk's kindness. She felt close to him. When she heard the regret in his sigh, she could not help but feel uneasy. She asked softly, "Can I choose black?" The old monk shook his head slowly, as if he was still unwilling to give up. He looked at the curtain and asked, "In the first game on the Wall Mountain, players can only choose white. Those who can pass the first game usually have some kind of psychological hint that they can keep winning by choosing white. I wonder why the Lady of Light did not hesitate to choose black." Sang Sang said, "Because black is first and has an advantage, so I chose black." The old monk was a little surprised to hear this answer. At this moment, the South Jin Kingdom chess master finally recalled some memories from many years ago. He looked at the old monk as if he had seen a ghost and said with a trembling voice, "When I was a child in the Taoist field, I saw your portrait. You are Master Dongming. Aren't you dead? This is the 3rd chapter. Try to finish the 4th chapter before 3 o'clock. To be continued. If you like this work, please come Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation." Chapter 563. The exclamation of the South Jin Kingdom chess master caused a commotion outside the pavilion. Anyone who knew how to play chess would have heard of Master Dongming's name, even if he had only learned a little. Around the Lang Temple, where there were many strong chess players, he was the only one recognized as the top player in the Wall Mountain for more than 100 years. Even in the world, he was the most outstanding figure. When Master Dongming was still a young monk, he had already shown his supreme wisdom in chess. He was responsible for guarding the last 3 games of chess on the Wall Mountain for more than a decade. When he was middle-aged, he suddenly disappeared without a trace. It was said that he had died a long time ago, but he was still the most legendary figure in the hearts of the chess players in the world. The South Jin Kingdom chess master looked at the old monk in the pavilion and thought that this old monk was regarded as the patriarch by many chess players. His body trembled uncontrollably, and he said in a trembling voice, "Are you still alive?" The old monk looked at him in surprise and said, "I didn't expect that someone in the world would recognize me." The South Jin Kingdom chess master finally calmed down a little. He hurriedly knelt on the futon and bowed to the old monk. He said respectfully, "I have seen your portrait in the Taoist field since I was a child, so I know you." The old monk sighed and said, "When I was traveling in the South Jin Kingdom, I played a game of chess with Xiaosu. I didn't expect him to remember it." The South Jin Kingdom chess master did not dare to interrupt when a master mentioned his teacher. However, he could not suppress his doubts and asked, "Master, why did you disappear for so many years?" After a moment of silence, the old monk said, "Many years ago, a young man came to the Lang Temple. His chess skills were amazing, and he defeated all the monks in the temple. So I went down the Wall Mountain and played 3 games with him. In the first 2 games, I won 1 game and lost 1 game. In the 3rd game, we had a dispute because of a different calculation method." The young man was extremely proud. He was probably anxious, so his words became more and more unpleasant. At that time, I did not know why I was angry and slapped him. The young man spat out a mouthful of blood and scolded me for being shameless. He left with hatred. I thought about what had happened that day and found that his calculation method was correct. I could not help but feel remorseful. After being enlightened by Elder Chishan, I left the chess room and lived in seclusion. I used cultivation to resolve my regret. The chess master of the South Jin Kingdom was shocked. He was proud of his amazing chess skills, and the chaotic game beside the jumping tiger stream was not difficult for him. But he never thought that he could defeat Master Dongming in chess. Even if Master Dongming had not touched the chessboard for many years, he still had no chance to win. But when Master Dongming was at his peak, someone could be on par with him. Who was at youth back then? The South Jin Kingdom chess master silently counted the time, and a legendary name that he admired the most gradually came to mind. But he couldn't say that name in front of Master Dongming, so he asked, why did you come out this time to preside over the Tile Mountain chess game?" The old monk looked at the curtain quietly. He did not speak, but he had already given his answer. Sang Sang was the only one who could bring the grandmaster of the chess world back to the world. The chessboard was very big, and so were the chess pieces. They needed to use specially made wooden forks to carry the chess pieces to the place where they wanted to land. Ninkei wanted to help, but Sang Sang refused. Seeing that she was so focused that she even forgot to cough, Ninkei was relieved. Then he focused on the chessboard through the gap of the curtain, although he could not understand it. The chess master of the South Jin Kingdom could understand it, but he was much quieter than when he was beside the jumping tiger stream. He no longer jumped up and down, but sat on the futon and watched the chess pieces quietly. He looked very honest. He did not think that Sang Sang could defeat Master Dongming, not even the slightest possibility. He thought that today's game was more like the game he played with the Empress in the palace, because chess was definitely not a simple calculation. The highest level needed wisdom, experience, and even an elusive feeling. No matter how delicate the endgame was, it was still alive. But when playing, the person on the other side of the chessboard was alive. Even if Sang Sang was a heaven teller and could forcibly solve the chaotic game with her incredible calculation ability, how could she predict the thoughts of her opponent, especially an unfathomable chess player like Master Dongming? However, the development of the game was completely different from what the chess master of the South Jin Kingdom had imagined. In the Autumn Pavilion, the number of black and white chess pieces on the big chessboard gradually increased, but the balance was still maintained. The chess master of the South Jin Kingdom was sure that it was not because Master Dongming was old and weak, which caused his chess skills to decline. Instead, it was because the white chess moves were more exquisite than the chess manual he had seen in the Taoist field. The chess configuration was like an antelope hanging its horn, and there was no trace of it at all. It was so wonderful that it could not be calculated. Under such circumstances, the chess game was in a stalemate, which could only mean one thing. Sang Sang, who held the black chess piece, was not inferior to Master Dongming at all in the chess game. In the eyes of the chess master of the South Jin Kingdom, the black chess moves were completely different from Master Dongming's. The black chess moves were purely based on the incredibly meticulous calculation, which was so meticulous that there were no loopholes. Gradually, it gave off a feeling that it was made by nature. When the black chess piece made its first move, it seemed that it had already thought of what would happen after 100 moves. The clues were hidden in the ethereal chess moves, which could not be imagined by ordinary people. What was more shocking was that the black chess pieces were so ruthless and tough in the middle game, as if the will of God had come to the world. When the chess master of the South Jin Kingdom looked at Master Dongming's white chess pieces, he felt as if he had melted into the spring scenery, which was so warm and beautiful that he did not want to wake up. When he looked at Sang Sang's black chess pieces, he felt as if he had come to the winter waterfall and watched the cold water splashing on the snow-covered cliff. He soberly felt the beauty and pain and wanted to leave, but did not want to. Sometimes it was warm in spring, sometimes it was cold in winter, sometimes it was on the lake, and sometimes it was in front of the waterfall. The chess master of the South Jin Kingdom looked at such a game and felt extremely happy. It was like a cultivator who had taken a heavenly power pill. He felt that his body had become so light that he could float to the pavilion at any time. It was so wonderful that he did not seem to be in the human world. When his eyes moved between the black and white chess pieces, he would wake up from time to time and look at the black chess pieces with some doubts. He felt that the chilling chess style was somewhat familiar, as if he had seen it somewhere before. He thought that he was shocked by the reappearance of Master Dongming, so he was a little absent-minded. He always felt that everything he saw was familiar, as if he had seen it somewhere before. Then he forgot about it. In the Autumn Pavilion, the black and white chess pieces on the big chessboard became denser and denser. The black and white colors on the chessboard created a feeling of harmony, which was perfect and balanced. The chess master of the South Jin Kingdom stared at the chessboard in a daze and had long forgotten where he was. Although he was not a cultivator, he faintly understood something. The people outside the Autumn Pavilion were no exception. The chessboard in the pavilion was large enough for them to see clearly. However, at this time, In the quiet crowd, no one paid attention to the details of the game. They saw the alternation of night and day, morning and dusk. The world kept rotating, and then they heard the bell in the morning and the drum in the evening. Amidst the bell and drum in the evening, a sense of peace gradually emerged. There was no longer any desire to win or lose. The autumn wind blew, and the birds in the forest behind the pavilion were chirping, and the cold insects were silent. The chess master of the South Jin Kingdom did not know when his eyes became wet. After a long time, the only thing I regret in my life is not being able to see Master Dongming and Master Songqian play. Today I have seen it with my own eyes. Even if I die now, I will have no regrets. The chess master of the South Jin Kingdom bowed to the old monk and said, "Thank you, master." Then he turned to bow to the curtain and said sincerely, "Thank you, young lady. You let me know that there are people with innate wisdom in the world. I am not qualified to be your teacher. I only wish to be your disciple." Sang Sang said with some shame, "I rarely win in the mountains. I am not qualified to be your disciple." Hearing this, the chess master of the South Jin Kingdom was slightly shocked. He thought that her playing style was somewhat familiar and could not help but think of an impossible possibility. He asked with a trembling voice, "May I ask, young lady, did you learn chess from Master Songqian?" Sang Sang shook her head in confusion. Ning Ke frowned slightly. He felt that the name was strange, but he did seem to have heard it somewhere. The old monk looked at the curtain and asked with concern, "How is Mr. Song doing in the academy?" Hearing this, Ning Ke finally remembered that when the back of the mountain of the academy distributed winter clothes last year, second brother's little attendant had once said the name Songqian. "Wasn't that? Are you talking about fifth brother?" Ning Ke's voice spread outside the pavilion. People were shocked and began to talk. They just knew that Master Songqian, the chess sage of South Jin Kingdom, had been cultivating on the second floor of the academy all these years. They could not help but admire the academy even more. The chess master of the South Jin Kingdom seemed to be dumbfounded. After a long time, he came to his senses and screamed, "I want to go to the academy. I want to go to the academy. I want to see Master Songqian." Ning Ke did not expect that fifth brother, who was so obsessed with chess that he often forgot to eat and looked unkempt, would be so famous in the world. He could not help but be stunned. The game in the pavilion was over. The two sides were equally matched. No one had the heart to destroy the perfect combination of black and white. They even felt that it was a blasphemy to count the pieces. Therefore, there was no winner without the number of pieces. The regretful look on Master Dongming's face had disappeared. As if he had understood something, he looked at Sang Sang through the curtain and said with a smile, "Black and white are determined by your heart. If you want to choose black, you choose black. If you want to choose white, you choose white. It's up to you. Life is no different from a chess game." Then he stood up and looked at Monk Guanhai and the abbot of the Lang Temple outside the pavilion. He said slowly, "Since younger brother has sealed the Chaotica game by the stream, I will also seal this game. If there are guests who want to go up the mountain, please do not stop them." Monk Guanhai was very surprised and asked in confusion, "Why?" Master Dongming said, "To be able to play a game of chess with such an opponent, and to be able to play such a game as the last game of my life. Is there a better ending than this?" The people outside the pavilion were very shocked. They thought that the chaotic coup game by the stream had been sealed, and the second game in the pavilion had become the last one. Was the legendary 3 games of Tile Mountain going to end today? The black horse carriage slowly went to the top of the mountain. Ning Ke thought of the chess game in the pavilion and finally could not help asking, "Who won?" Sang Sang said, "I should have won a few pieces, but the black pieces were at an advantage." Ning Ke was startled, and then he laughed. Then he sighed and said, "No wonder fifth brother said that the monks in the Lang Temple were good at playing chess. You learned from him. Today, you beat that old monk, and you won back the blood that senior brother spat out back then." Dozens of days ago, at the back of the mountain of the academy, people saw Ning Ke and Sang Sang off. At that time, fifth brother looked at Sang Sang and said kindly, "Song Song's understanding of chess is far better than youngest brother's. The important task of maintaining the academy as the best chess player in the world will be handed over to you. The academy was the best in the world, whether it was chess, zither, or calligraphy. However, it was not easy to maintain this position, but it was just as fifth brother had hoped. Today, Sang Sang did it. I was late by a dozen minutes and wrote a few hundred more words. Otherwise, I would not be happy. Haha. Yes, yes. Do you want to vote for me? To be continued. If you like this work, you're welcome to vote for me and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 564. I've written 1 to 4 chapters, and I'll make sure to write 3 chapters tomorrow. I'm really working hard, so please support me, understand me, and encourage me. Secondly, while I'm breaking out, I'm also trying my best to ensure the quality. I don't dare to hope that everyone will like the plots I write, but what I want to say is that I'll try my best to write well. The updated ones will at least be ones that I like, and I hope that you guys will like them as well. Thirdly, the appearance of the Lang Temple a long time ago meant that they were going to play chess. Although I didn't know how to play chess, there were 2 main points in the legend of the Lang Temple, which are the main points in this volume. Song Song's chess playing had also been buried a long time ago. I was very happy to see it blossom today. Fourth, I'm still a fan of Sang Sang. Sang Sang said that I wrote attentively and satisfactorily. Don't say that I'm sour. I haven't showered for days, so of course I'm sour. When I opened the book at night, I said that Sang Sang was the female lead. I didn't say that I would spoil the story, but I did say that at least the ending of the book would be bright. Although I've always been melodramatic, there are some plots that I won't write because I'm not good at it. Fifth, Deep Sea Ling once wrote a book review about freedom. At the time, I said that freedom was one of the 2 things Jiang Yi wanted to write about in this book. I believe everyone already knows what the other thing is. It's that foreign poem that Chinese people are most familiar with, but I'll change the order. I've always wanted to wait a few more days before directly changing the introduction, but I can't help it anymore. 6. The annual monthly votes have once again increased to more than 1,000 votes. I hope that everyone will continue to support me. Another very important thing is that the annual monthly votes champion does not just look at one book, but all the books under the author's name. So if any of you have voted for Jiang Yi and have more votes, please vote for Spy, Qin Yunyan, or Vermilion Bird. I know that this is indeed very troublesome, so I'm sorry to trouble you. Thank you very much. 7. I know I'm a chatterbox. I won't delete this chapter within a year as a warning. 8. Please vote monthly. Thank you. Joe, please vote again. Thank you very much. 10. Please vote again and again. Thank you very much. 11. Ditto. 12. And the same as above. 100. Even if I don't have monthly votes, I can still vote for him. Good night, everyone. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 565. As they got closer and closer to the peak of Tile Mountain, the Buddha's statue became taller and taller in their eyes. It was as if the top of its head had touched the real sky. The cultivators were shocked to see this. The South Jin Kingdom chess master did not care about the Buddha statue at all. He followed the black horse carriage like an obedient student, his eyes full of admiration and yearning. The crown prince of South Jin Kingdom was naturally in a bad mood when he saw his subordinate behaving like this. When a mountain wind occasionally lifted the curtains of the carriage and revealed Emo Shanshan's beautiful face, his expression grew uglier. The monk in the Buddhist chariot was undoubtedly the most respected person there. Therefore, although he kept quiet, no one dared to approach except the sadhus of Yuelun Kingdom. For someone from the unknown lands to suddenly appear in the mortal world, it must be because of something important, but no one could guess the purpose of his visit. The terrain of Tile Mountain was extremely open and gentle, as if the whole mountain had been cut off from the middle. It naturally formed a huge stone platform. However, because the Buddha statue in the middle of the platform was too tall, it seemed a little small, like a tile stepped by the Buddha. The Buddha statue behind the Lang Temple was said to be one of the tallest Buddhist statues in the world. However, one could only truly feel the indescribable shock when standing in front of the Buddha statue. Ninkei looked up and saw a few wisps of autumn clouds floating past the chest of the Buddha statue. He remembered a few years ago when he brought Sang Sang back to Chong, and then looked at the city wall of Chong and towering in the clouds. Only then did he realize that the Buddha statue seemed to be taller than the city wall of Chong, and he could not help but subconsciously feel small. The cave where Master Chishan lived was not on the peak. The black horse carriage bypassed the Buddha statue and followed the mountain path for a while. Then they saw a shabby door under the huge left heel of the Buddha statue. The autumn sun had already set. The shadow of the Buddha statue on Tile Mountain almost covered the entire foothills of the back of the mountain. The cave was right under the Buddha statue and was even more secluded. The vines between the stone walls seemed to have turned into thick black lines. There was a natural cave on the cliff between the vines. There was a square stone platform in front of the cave. Next to the mountain path was a door made of firewood and grass. It was the shabby door that people saw. The lock on the door was rusty, and it was obvious that it was rarely opened. But today, the door to the hut had already been opened. The black horse carriage stopped in front of the hut. Ning Ke helped Sang Sang out of the carriage. It was the hottest time of the day. Although there were shadows over the mountains, it was not cold, so he did not put a coat on her. This was the first time many cultivators saw Song Song's appearance clearly. Everyone looked at this ordinary-looking, yellow-haired, and listless little girl, and couldn't help but feel astonished. Could this unremarkable little girl be the legendary Lady of Light? Monk One Hai led them into the hut. An old monk stood outside the cave. It was unknown how long he had been waiting. Those who lived in seclusion in the Wa Mountain were all senior monks of the Lang Temple, so they were naturally very old. However, this old monk was a little different. It was still autumn, but the old monk had already put on a thick cotton robe. He seemed to be extremely afraid of the cold, but he didn't look fat in such a thick robe. One could imagine how thin the body under the robe was. Looking at his yellow-haired, long eyebrows, and listless appearance, it seemed that he was sick or had been sick for a long time. Sang Sang opened her eyes wide and looked at the old monk curiously. She felt that he was very close and familiar. After a while, she understood what was going on and couldn't help but smile. The old monk also smiled and said, "Could it be that people who have been sick for a long time in the world look similar? I feel close to you, little girl, and I think you feel the same way. It's a pity that I can't even cure my own illness. Maybe you will feel disappointed later, but don't be distant from me." The old monk was naturally Master Chishan. In order to save the world during the flood, Master Chishan had spent a lot of effort and cultivation. After he was seriously ill, he had to fight against the torrential turbid waves for a whole night. His cultivation was almost destroyed, and this illness had been with him for decades. Ning Ke looked at Master Chishan and said respectfully, "Master, you have been sick for a long time, so you can naturally cure people." Master Chishan looked at Ning Ke and said with a smile, "Mr. 13 is indeed an interesting person. I heard that you were extremely tough at the foot of the mountain today, but I didn't expect you to be so gentle in front of the hut." Ning Ke was extremely thick-skinned and said confidently, "When I was at the foot of the mountain, I was anxious to see you. Because I was anxious, 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 and because I was anxious, I lost my composure. Now that I have finally seen you, I deeply regret that I lost my composure. How can I go back to my old ways? 70 years ago, I once asked the headmaster of the academy, 'How can you call yourself a junior in front of me?' Master Chishan waved his hand and said, 'You and I can call each other senior and junior brother.'" When he said this, Ning Ke and the other cultivators didn't feel anything strange. However, Monk Guan Hai, who had been asked by Ning Ke to call him senior and junior brother, became even darker. He thought that the seniority was really messed up. Master Chishan looked at Sang Sang and asked with a smile, "Will you still play the third game?" Sang Sang slightly leaned forward to salute and answered, "Yes." If Master Dongming in the Autumn Pavilion had made her feel close, then this old monk in front of her not only made her feel close, but also very trustworthy. It was as if she had seen her teacher, so she behaved very politely. Sang Sang was a very transparent person. Whether others were kind or malicious to her, It was like light or darkness. It could directly show the true side of her heart, so she had never misjudged anyone. Seeing the trust in her subtle movements, Ning Ke gradually calmed down. Master Chishan asked again, "Do you represent the West Hill Divine Palace?" Or Sang Sang was the next great divine priest of light and had a very close relationship with the academy. That was why Master Chishan asked this question. Sang Sang was startled and answered, "I represent my young master." In the past few years, she had gotten used to calling Ning Ke young master. Others didn't know this habit of hers. Today, on Tile Mountain, those cultivators heard it for the first time. They couldn't help but be shocked and speechless. They thought that the Lady of Light actually called someone else young master. Many people looked at Ning Ke with complicated expressions. They couldn't tell if they were envious or jealous. And those cultivators who had been loyal to the West Hill Divine Palace for thousands of years even vaguely showed anger. Master Chishan listened to this answer and nodded slightly. He said, "Then you represent the academy." Sang Sang thought for a while and said, "It seems so." Master Chishan looked at Ning Ke and asked with a smile, "You are treated as a young master by the Lady of Light of the West Hill Divine Palace. Didn't Mr. Second say that it was against etiquette and didn't punish you with the academy rules?" Ning Ke said with a smile, "My wife is used to calling me that. As for second brother, the headmaster and eldest brother are both back, so I'm not afraid of him." Master Chishan laughed, but affected his old illness, and he coughed repeatedly. Monk Guanhai hurriedly took out a pill and helped him swallow it. Master Chishan walked to the rattan, next to the stone platform, and sat beside a chessboard. He said, "Although I am here to cure my illness, we still need to play chess since we set such a boring rule." After a few conversations, Ning Ke confirmed that the relationship between the master and the academy was very close. He felt more relaxed and emboldened. He asked tentatively, "If I lose, can I still see her?" The master said, "Buddha is merciful." The 3 games of chess on Wa Mountain picked the fated ones. "Since this little girl is sick, and I have some superficial medical skills, this is fate. How can I not see her?" Ning Ke was very happy and said casually, "This is the master's mercy, not the Buddha's mercy." Nowadays, there are 2 sects of Buddhism and Taoism, thousands of Taoist temples and hundreds of Buddhist temples. Who still remembers these 2 words? Master Chishan sighed and said, "If you're too close to the light, you can't see anything else. If you're too far away from the Buddha, you can't see the Buddha himself." Just like the Buddha statue on top of Wa Mountain is so huge, and I don't know how many people have spent on it. However, when you walk in front of the Buddha statue, you can only see a little finger at most. There was a deep meaning in his words. Monk Guanhai and the monks of Lang Temple looked solemn and listened quietly. The monks from Yueluan Kingdom's White Tower Temple also listened carefully. Only Cuny Mati showed a slightly mocking expression, thinking that the old monk was deliberately mystifying. Master Chishan was such a person that he naturally wouldn't care about this old woman. He looked up at the huge Buddha statue above the hut that seemed to be able to break the sky. He said with emotion, before the Buddha's nirvana, he had left a Dharma decree that Taoism should not erect statues and worship. However, thousands of years have passed. How many Buddhist disciples still remember these words? Which Buddhist temple doesn't have a golden statue of the Buddha in the main hall? Back then, the juniors in Lang Temple insisted on erecting one, and they wanted to erect such a tall one. I couldn't stop them, so I had to move the hut under the Buddha's feet. I thought that if the Buddha was unhappy one day, he could step on my feet to vent his anger. Monk Guanhai seemed to have understood something. The monks of Lang Temple suddenly became serious, and the abbot looked even more terrified. At this moment, in the Buddhist chariot that had been quiet for a whole day, the deep voice sounded again. The president of Commandment Yard from Xiankong Temple praised, "It has been 50 years since we last met. Uncle's Dharma has become more and more exquisite. Congratulations." Master Chishan shook his head and said, "I left the temple when I was young and returned to the world of mortals. I have never signed my name in the secretary's office or the lecture hall. How can I deserve to be called uncle by the president?" The monk in the Buddha's chariot didn't say anything, but insisted on bowing. Master Qishan acted as if he didn't see it. He looked at Sang Sang and asked, "Little girl, are you hungry?" At noon in the temple, Sang Sang only ate some vegetables. After playing chess in the autumn pavilion, not only was she not tired, but she became more energetic. She began to feel a little hungry, so she nodded. Master Qishan took out a green pear from somewhere and wiped it with his cotton sleeve. Then he handed it to Sang Sang and said lovingly, "Eat a pear first to fill your stomach." Thank you very much for your monthly votes for the Vermilion Bird novel during the Qingyu year. There are 3 chapters today. This is the first chapter. I will try to finish the next chapter before midnight. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 566. Sang Sang took the green pear and lowered her head to eat it. She found that the pear was very sweet and juicy. The strangest thing was that it had a strange texture, as if it melted in her mouth. She could not help but be stunned. She raised her head and handed the remaining half of the pear to Ning, Quebec. She said, "Try it. It's very sweet." Ever since they were young, the two of them were used to sharing any delicious food. Ningke did not care about the saying of sharing pears. He took the green pear and swallowed it in a few bites. Master Qishan did not expect that they would even have to share an ordinary green pear. He could not help but be stunned. Then he shook his head and said, "Let's begin." Sang Sang still chose the black chess piece. Under the rattan corridor in front of the hut, the chessboard was made of some unknown material. It looked like iron and gave off a cold and hard feeling. But when the chess piece landed on it, there was no sound. Just as Sang Sang's fingertips left the black chess piece, something strange happened. Her eyes suddenly became a little confused, and then she slowly closed her eyes. Her eyelashes did not even blink. It was as if she had fallen asleep, just like that. Ning Kei's pupils shrank slightly. Every hair on his body stood on end. The cool autumn wind passed through his hair, stimulating his mind like ice. He stared into Master Qishan's eyes. The fingers of his right hand gradually closed, forming a fist in the air. It was just enough to fit the hilt of a knife. His little finger trembled at a very high speed, ready to pull out the pedal behind him at any time. "Don't be nervous," Master Qishan said. "She is just tired," so she went to sleep for a while in her dream. Ning Kei sensed Sang Sang's condition and found that her breathing was very calm, even calmer than usual. Other than that, there was nothing strange. It seemed that she was really just asleep. "What's going on?" he asked coldly. Master Qishan smiled and said, "This is good for her body." Sang Sang, who had mysteriously fallen asleep, seemed to be really comfortable. Her eyebrows, which were often frowned because of pain, were very relaxed, and she did not cough. Ning Kei put his hand on her wrist and found that the cold aura in her body had also become very calm. It was not as restless as usual, so he was slightly relieved, but he could not completely relax. He stared into Master Qishan's eyes and asked again, "What is going on?" Master Qishan looked at the chessboard in front of him and said, "You should have heard of the legend of the Lank Temple. The chessboard you're looking at now is the one used by the old monks in the legend." Ning Kei asked, "Who left this chessboard?" Master Qishan said, "Buddha." Thinking of the legend, Ning Kei suddenly felt nervous. Why did Sang Sang use this chessboard to play chess? I just found out that Master Dongming presided over the final game of the 3 games of chess on the Wa Mountain. He definitely didn't use this chessboard. Master Qishan said, "Just take it as a test from Buddha." Ning Kei said, "We are here to cure diseases, not to pray to Buddha. Why do we need to be tested by Buddha?" Master Qishan said, "If only Buddha can cure her illness, will you beg or not?" After a long silence, Ning Kei asked, "Is she in danger?" Master Qishan said, "There is no danger." Ning Kei suddenly thought of a possibility and said in a hoarse voice, "But she will suffer a lot." Master Qishan said, "If she is in pain, you will feel it." Ning Kei asked, "Then what should we do next? Should we continue?" Master Qishan looked at the lonely black chess piece on the chessboard. He took out a white chess piece from the urn beside him and gently placed it opposite the black chess piece. He said, "This game has begun." As time passed, the autumn sun gradually moved to the west. The Wa mountain cave was shrouded in a tense and mysterious atmosphere. No one knew what happened on the chessboard and why Sang Sang fell asleep as soon as she put down one piece. Ninkei almost lost his patience several times. But thinking of the respect and trust Sang Sang showed to Master Chishan before placing the chess piece, he suppressed his uneasiness and continued to wait in silence. There were still only 2 chess pieces on the chessboard. Ninkei did not look at the chessboard, but at Sang Sang's face. He paid attention to whether she showed any expression of pain, whether there was any change in her breathing, and whether there was any abnormality in her body. He looked very carefully and attentively without blinking. He did not miss the slight tremble of Sang Sang's eyelashes, even though those trembles were caused by the autumn wind in the mountains. Mo Shanshan stood outside the hut and quietly looked at Ning Kei's expression. She also looked very carefully and attentively. On the stone bench beside the mountain path, the crown prince of the South Jin Kingdom stared at Mo Shanshan's beautiful side profile. His expression was focused, occasionally showing infatuation and sadness. If the world was a big chessboard and everyone was a chess piece on the chessboard, then no one would be able to escape. Everyone had to be the one they wanted to see, unless they no longer had any attachment to this world. The flower addict, Lu Qinjia, looked at the people outside and outside the hut silently. A mocking smile suddenly flashed across her beautiful face. Then, she left the hut and returned to the foot of the Buddha statue at the top of the mountain. The Buddha statue was very tall. Even one of its toes was much bigger than her. Lu Qinjia stood on the pinky of the Buddha statue and gently tucked her flowing hair behind her ears. She looked up and was dazzled by the autumn sun in the west. She squinted her eyes. The Buddha's face was faintly discernible in the clouds, looking down at the foot of the mountain in silence. He was not looking at a specific individual, but at all the people struggling in the mortal world, so he appeared to be extremely merciful. Lu Qinjia looked for a long time before looking away. She saw a small white flower in a small crack at the foot of the Buddha statue. She bent down and plucked it. Sang Sang stood on a mountain in a daze. There was a small town at the foot of the mountain. She could faintly hear the sound of children playing. She could see the water wheel by the stream outside the town. She could even smell the aroma of food at noon. She knew that this was not the real world, because in this world, she did not have Ning Kei by her side. However, she could not confirm whether this world was the world on a chessboard, because she was looking at the world itself and not the chessboard. When she found herself standing on a mountain, it was late at night. When the smoke rose in the morning, she went down the mountain once and walked around the town. Then, she walked back up the mountain and found a tree. She continued to stare blankly. She was not prepared to leave, because she did not know if she could find her way back if she went too far. And if Ning Kei wanted to come to this world to find her, she should stand where she was and wait for him. When she was very young, Ning Kei would repeatedly remind her before he went out to hunt or do other things. No matter what happened, she should not leave where she was because he would not be able to find her if she did. At that time, Sang Sang would always confirm, "Will you definitely come back to find me?" Ning Kei said of course, so Sang Sang was relieved. She followed his instructions and stood where she was without moving. Sang Sang stood for a long time, so long that she finally forgot how long it had been. She only remembered that the sun had risen and set countless times. The rain, snow, frost, and wind had rotated countless times, and the firecrackers in the town had sounded many times. These people seemed to have a lot of happy things to do. Sang Sang thought that since Ning Kei had not found her after such a long time, she would not be happy to hear firecrackers. Time continued to pass, and Sang Sang was still waiting. Her feet were tired, so she sat down and rested for a while. When she was sleepy, she leaned against the tree for a while. There were 2 nests of ants under the tree. Sang Sang was a little bored while waiting for Ning Kei, so she began to watch the ants move or fight. She did not know how many times she watched. The members of the 2 nests had probably changed for hundreds of generations. Finally, she found something very interesting when the ants moved. The two nests crawled at the same speed, and the distance from the tree was exactly the same. But the place where the honey overflowed from the tree was different every time. Sometimes one nest of ants could walk in a straight line, while the other nest of ants had to walk in a curve around the puddle. So the nest of ants that walked in a straight line could get the honey first. The straight line between 2 points was the shortest. Sang Sang silently thought that this was the rule that the world wanted to tell her. There were towns in this world, and there were people and mountains in the towns. There were beasts and trees in the mountains, and birds in the trees. There was water, wind, clouds, day and night. Naturally, there were rules. Sang Sang did not go down the mountain, but because she had too much time to see and think, she gradually grasped many rules in this world. For example, the light was warm and the night was cold. This kind of rule was very boring. Some of the rules were even more sad. In the town, firecrackers were not only set off for happy events, but also for funerals. Sang Sang stood on the mountain and watched the children in the town gradually grow old, become sick, and then die, disappearing with the firecrackers. The ashes of the firecrackers were rolled up by the wind, floating from the graveyard outside the town, and kept moving forward around the mountain until they gradually faded away. Sang Sang noticed that every time the wind came from the same place, the direction of the ashes was exactly the same, as if there was an arrow guiding it, always moving forward. She understood that this was the rule of time. Time kept moving forward, and no one could stop it. Sang Sang was still on the mountain. A woodcutter went up to the mountain to cut firewood, and a child went up to the mountain to herd sheep. For countless years, many people walked by the tree, but no one could see her. There were even 3 generations of cattle tied under the tree, but nothing could touch her. She really existed in this world. Apart from not being able to interact with this world, she was still bound by the rules of this world, so she would feel tired, cold, and hot. Of course, there were some rules that could not bind her. She had never eaten, but she had never been hungry. She remembered the legend of the Lang Temple that Ning Ke had once told her. The woodcutter named Wang Ji had eaten a steamed bun, so he had spent 100 years beside the chessboard under the tree, but he had never been hungry. Sang Sang did not eat the steamed bun, but she had just eaten a green pear. Then she understood something, walked to the edge of the cliff, and jumped down. Chapter 3. Come out before 2 o'clock. To be continued. If you like this work, please come Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 567. There is no dream in this world, only 100 years of length. Sang Sang remembered the legend and understood that she had probably encountered the same thing as the woodcutter. The only difference was that the woodcutter had wasted 100 years in the real world, while she had left the real world and come here. She did not know if this world was real, whether it was a dream or a spiritual illusion created by a powerful person. But now that she knew the truth, it was enough for her to deduce more things. Just as Ning Ke had said, she was a very smart girl. It was just that she was used to standing behind Ning Ke and was too lazy to use her brain. She let Ning Ke think about everything. This time, she was lazy for a little longer. She only began to think when she was sure that Ning Ke would not come to find her, or that he could not find her. The result of her thinking was that she was still in the chess game. But this time, her opponent was not Master Qishan, but the rules of the world itself. What she needed to do was to defeat these rules. Rules were the foundation of the world. The reason why the world could exist and why people could live was because of these rules. It seemed impossible to defeat rules into rules. But Sang Sang thought that she was not from this world. Even if she could not defeat the rules of this world, she should be able to find the similarities between the two worlds, which was the contradiction between the rules of the two worlds. Then she could use this contradiction to find a way to break the rules of this world, or a way to leave this world. Many people in the small town had died, and the firecrackers had been set off many times. She was still alive and had not even grown up. The speed of time in this world and the real world was obviously different. It should be the opposite of the legend of Lang Temple. At the same time, it proved that the rules of time that worked on her were still outside the chessboard. The physical rules of the chessboard world and the rules of time in the real world worked on her at the same time. Then she was the connection between the rules of the two worlds, and she herself was the cause of the contradiction. Then if she died in this world, she could get rid of the other rules of this world and follow the rules of time in the real world to return outside the chessboard and wake up. So she walked to the edge of the cliff and jumped down. Then she fell heavily down the cliff. Her bones were all broken and she was in great pain. Her vision went black. Then she reappeared on the cliff, still standing under the tree, as if nothing had happened. Sang Sang looked a little confused. She felt that something was wrong. If this game of chess was really progressing as she had deduced, then her choice should be correct. But why couldn't she die? There is no way to disappear from this world. She stood at the foot of the tree for a moment, then untied her belt and tied it to the tree. His neck hurt a little. The next moment, she stood under the tree and stared blankly at the belt that had returned to her waist, thinking that she should choose another method. There was a lake not far from the tree. The lake water could also drown people. The lake failed to drown her. Over the next few days, Sang Sang tried all kinds of ways to die, but none of them worked. She was still standing in the mountain. Other than the fear and pain in her memory, there was no sign that she had ever died. What exactly went wrong? Death was the only way to eternity. Eternity was the highest law that surpassed time. Since he couldn't even break the law of time, how could he break the highest law? While thinking silently, she forgot one thing. The highest law of death was broken, which meant that all the laws of this world would loosen, and then it would be on the verge of collapse. Gradually, the light began to turn cold, and the night began to warm up. The two nests of ants fighting for the honey under the tree vaguely walked around the rocks, and could even reach the honey one step ahead of their enemies. Time began to slow down, and the speed at which the people in the town aged slowed. For many years, there were no firecrackers for funerals, but no one was happy about it. Instead, they were especially afraid. The firecrackers for happy occasions gradually became fewer and fewer until there were no firecrackers at all. The water wheel on the stream had long stopped turning, and the farmland became barren. The whole world was in chaos, and then it fell into silence. This was also why, whether it was the real world or the world in the chessboard, no eternal existence could be allowed except for eternity itself, because it would cause the whole world to be destroyed. The laws of this world finally noticed Sang Sang on the mountain. The world shook uneasily, the fields rolled, the sea boiled, and the mountains toppled. The mountain beneath Sang Sang shook violently, and she was thrown into the air. Countless laws turned into light balls and flew toward the sky, shining brightly. These light balls contained a milky white radiance, without any temperature, and looked like cold white chess pieces. Sang Sang floated in the air, looking at the bright chess pieces in confusion. She was like a lonely black chess piece. The next moment, she would be swallowed by the light. It was dusk on Tile Mountain. The red and warm twilight shone on the face of the stone statue of Buddha, making it look particularly solemn. Buddha looked down at all the pain in the world and seemed to be in pain as well. He wanted to frown. However, his eyebrows were lines carved by craftsmen between the boulders, as hard as steel. Thus, an extremely thin crack appeared between his eyebrows. In the cave in the shadow of Buddha, Sang Sang, who was beside the chessboard, suddenly frowned, as if she was in pain. Ning Ke suddenly became nervous, and his right hand trembled slightly. After a moment, the painful expression on Sang Sang's face disappeared, and she became calm again. Ning Ke heaved a sigh of relief. Then, Sang Sang frowned again. She became calm again. This was repeated several times. All of a sudden, Sang Sang's face became extremely pale, and her eyebrows were tightly knitted together. Her thin body trembled violently, and she seemed to be in great pain. One could even feel her fear in her sleep. Ning Ke had been extremely nervous, and he had long reached the limit of his endurance. At this time, seeing Sang Sang's abnormality, he did not hesitate to pull out the padao behind him and slashed at the chessboard. Master Qishan said that this chessboard was left by Buddha, so it must be very precious. But at this moment, not to mention the chessboard left by Buddha, even if Buddha himself appeared in front of him, Ning Ke would also slash at him. It was not a joke for him to kill the Buddha in his way. Of course, Ninkei was also very clear that the chessboard left by Buddha could not be destroyed so easily. During the previous process of waiting nervously, he had already made preparations. Therefore, he blasted out all the great spirit in his body through this slash, mixed with Hao Ian's divine light, and used Liu Bai's day sword skill. This was the strongest slash he could make. Smoke and dust rose, and there were spots of light. The padao was shaken back by the chessboard. The chessboard was safe. Sang Sang did not wake up. Ning Ke held the padao and fell asleep. Master Qishan's face became more and more haggard. He sighed and said, "What a pair of idiots." The world was in chaos before the destruction. The surviving humans finally felt the fear of death. They drove their own carriages or robbed others' carriages and began to flee. They did not know whether they were to flee from the floods that fell from the sky, from the peaks that rose from the waters of the lakes, from the heat of the night and the chill of the day, but they fled blindly and wildly. At a certain intersection, the fleeing crowd was forced to stop. A black carriage was blocking the intersection, and it knocked over several other carriages, making the already chaotic intersection even more chaotic. It was so blocked that no one could move. The black carriage was blocking the intersection. Those who wanted to escape to the south could not go south, and those who wanted to escape to the west could not go west. The crazy man who wanted to seek the last love in the end could not catch the disheveled girl across the street. The young man who crawled out from the pile of corpses could not hug his first love when he saw her. The people in the end of the world shouted angrily and cursed. Some people picked up mud and threw it at the black carriage. However, the young man in the black carriage did not seem to hear these voices. He let the mud hit his body and shook into pieces. He still looked up at the sky in a daze. There were many white lights in the sky. He did not know what they represented, but he could feel the terrifying energy contained in them. He could even guess what they were going to do. The young man in the black carriage was Ning Quebec. He did not know how he came to this world, nor did he know why he could bring the big black horse and the carriage here. However, he felt very lucky when he thought that he could find Sang Sang in this world. It was very difficult to find a person in the chaotic end of the world. Ning Ke had been looking for Sang Sang for a long time, but he had not found her. Today, he finally looked up at the sky. He shouted to the big black horse. The big black horse neighed and raised its 4 hooves, driving the carriage made of iron and steel. It crushed the carriages and the crowd in front of it, leaving a trail of blood and debris in its wake as it made a bloody path among the fleeing crowd. The black carriage chased after the light. A few days later, the black carriage came under Sang Sang. Ning Ke looked up at Sang Sang in the sky. Countless light rays were passing through Sang Sang's transparent body. The light rays did not have any temperature. However, there were so many that the light rays inevitably rubbed against each other. The speed of the light rays was very fast, and the friction between them was terrible. It could produce a terrifying high temperature. Sang Sang's body had already begun to burn. Ning Ke shouted, "Sang Sang." Sang Sang did not seem to hear him. She did not look down at the ground. Ning Ke shouted again, "Sang Sang." Sang Sang heard him this time. She looked at him and cried, "I don't know what's wrong." Ning Ke said, "Don't be afraid. Come to me." Sang Sang shook her head and looked at the light around her. She said, "You will die." Ning Ke said, "I said that if you die, I will die too. Why don't we die together?" Sang Sang thought it made sense, so she landed. Those pure white balls of light followed her and fell to the ground. Ning Ke took out the big black umbrella and handed it to Sang Sang. Sang Sang opened the big black umbrella as if opening up a piece of night. The night covered her, Ning Ke, and the black carriage. The rules of this world could no longer find them. They disappeared from this world. Ning Ke and Sang Sang woke up at the same time. They found themselves still in Wa Mountain. Outside the cave, by the chessboard, there were only 2 chess pieces on the chessboard. One was black, and the other was white. To be continued. If you like this work, please come come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.